All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Book Graveyard. Or if you first time being here, welcome to the Book Graveyard. Today, I have two special guests. We got Scott and Josh from the Lighting the Pipes podcast.
Hey guys,
what's going on, fellas?
Hey, thanks for having us on, Nick. This is cool, man.
I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this ever since I listened to your episode of the Maigret and the Headless Corpse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was an interesting episode. I think Josh did some good work on that one, some good context digging. He did a good.
Yeah, and you guys weren't. You didn't seem too impressed by it, and I was a little bothered by it because I love the Maigret series. So I wrote you a message, and I was like, let's try another one. Let's do it together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's right, and we're really happy you did because, like we said on the show, that was our first Maigret story. It was the first time we picked up a Simenon book, and it was fun. Like we both said, we want to do another one of this because he did write so prolifically, and there are so many stories with him in it. But it's just a really timely message you sent us. So yeah, this is cool. This is good.
Very cool. Yeah, it's like Scott said, we were willing to go and check out more. It's just that, what we got in that one instance, it left us wanting more and wanted to really, because I knew the character from before. I knew he was popular. I knew there was movies. I knew there was a TV series. I remember being shown the one with Michael Gambon from the 1990s that came out. And so I was, curious to see what it was all about. So I'm definitely here to talk about, our second experience with Maigret, because I think it was definitely illuminating compared to the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that, but I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Of course.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. So the book we will be talking about is the Maigret and the Yellow Dog. This was out in 1931.
Yeah,
I have it written down as the fifth entry, but you guys,
is that right? Okay,
pre-video have been saying the sixth, and I will mention that as I looked it up online. Yeah. Everywhere it had something different. It was either 5, 6. Okay. I saw one list that didn't even have it on there.
Yeah. Well,
but
okay.
Correct.
So your cover there, Nick. Sorry, Josh. Just your cover there. Is that that's a hardcover you got? Is it?
Yeah.
Is that? Oh, that's cool. I quite like that one. Yeah.
That's really neat.
Is it a cigarette the dog's hovering over? I can't see.
It's a cigar.
A cigar. Nice one. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So I remember reading in the Wikipedia information on Simenon that Maigret first appeared in this story before Peter the Latvian, before the official first Maigret story, and but he wasn't really fully fleshed as a character. Now I don't know if that information is accurate or not. Maybe someone got everything conflated, but maybe that's where the confusion between the 5 and the 6 is, whether or not which one Yellow Dog actually is in the series.
Maybe. And they were all written. The first ones were all written in the early 30s or 31. I think he did 5 or 6 of these. So
yeah,
it could be mixed up the timeline of it or whatever.
I read the English version of this. I guess the U.S. edition, or sort of the British edition, was 1939, I believe, when it was translated.
Oh, I think my translation was, let's see, 87.
Okay, so
that was Asher in 87.
Yeah, this one's got the same translated copyright.
No, that was 87. Yeah, you're right.
Linda Asher is who's online.
Yeah, okay, we can just edit that part out. 1939, I don't know where that came from.
That's the start of the war, Josh. I'm confused here, buddy.
It's an interesting year. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, it might be getting ahead, but I was, that doesn't surprise me that it took till 87 to get it translated into English, because I grew up never hearing of Maigret whatsoever. And it blew my mind when I first discovered it, how huge it is everywhere else. But here,
I had no idea it existed until 2 years ago, where my uncle, he showed me a random episode of the show when I was visiting him and my aunt. And it was just a random episode. Oh, hey, it's cool. It's Michael Gambon, R.I.P. Dumbledore, right? And Dumbledore 2, I should say. And there it was, and I kind of enjoyed it. This was like Paris. Everyone had an English accent, but it was Paris, and it felt very procedural. So, it was interesting to watch. And the mystery was very domestic, very typical procedural kind of stuff set like in a 1950s, 60s aesthetic. And it intrigued me. But that was my first Maigret experience. So when I saw that, and we're thinking about, doing episodes for the next season, at that time, I told Scott, well, I saw this thing, Maigret by this author Simenon, but that there's lots of books apparently. We should go check that out. Which is what we do on the show. Is we're going through as many as we can, getting a survey of all the different mystery novels and spy thrillers out there and series. Like, I think Maigret is probably the first time that we did more than one book by an author, if I'm not mistaken. Like more than one. Because we never went back to Falco. We never went back to Bosch yet.
Maybe so. Well, I mean, we've done full series on like Chandler and on Conan Doyle, but I think I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've done 2 episodes on the Saint now.
Chandler. Yeah.
Yeah, we've done a couple on Charteris, but yeah, I think you'd probably be right.
Well, yeah.
Someone can rifle through the episode list and tell us what we're wrong, but
absolutely, I'm sure there's someone out there who can do that. Please,
I'd be delighted if there was. To be perfectly honest,
we'll correct yourself.
I wanted to ask about the podcast, and I tried to scroll back through Spotify. They make it very difficult to get to the bottom. Yeah. So when did you guys first start doing this specific podcast? Because I know that you had podcasts before it.
Yeah, so Lighting the Pipes started in 2017, and it kind of started from a sort of a bit of a shame that I had. I'm over here in Scotland in the UK, and I'm a school teacher over here. And I tell you, Nick, like someone had recommended this Sherlock Holmes thing to me, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll check this out. It might have been Baskerville or something. And then I got to thinking, I've never read a Sherlock Holmes story in my life. Like, I think I should probably read at least a Sherlock Holmes story. Like, I'm a big reader, obviously. It's kind of what I do, day job and hobby and stuff. So I might as well get into this, and felt a bit ashamed of it. So I read it, but then I thought, actually, if I'm going to read it, I'm going to try to turn it into something I can use it in my job and, take some notes on each of the stories, some context. So I picked up a copy of Leslie Klinger's Annotated Holmes, which is an awesome collection. But I thought for myself, Josh and I have done a lot of projects in the past together, whether it's like music related or book related or whatever. And so I just sent him a wee message, and I said, hey, buddy, like, you want to read these Holmes stories with me and just record reviews like we did with Ian Fleming a couple of years before that and all the James Bond books. So he's like, yeah, why not? Like, it could be fun. So it kind of started out of that. And our early episodes are of the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. And we're very much finding our feet in terms of how this podcast would evolve. Those early episodes and kind of the tech and the editing behind them aren't necessarily as great as the ones that we're doing.
I prefer garage sound, Scott. Garage sound is good.
Right. I think that's what I'm looking for, the garage tapes. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of where Lighting the Pipe started. And concurrently, we were doing this other podcast with our buddy Jeff Chapman about James Bond and like kind of that universe, which we're all good fans of. And that kind of died its natural death. We got where we wanted with that, and this podcast was really satisfying our itch, for books and literature and good conversations. So we just carried on, and Sherlock Holmes turned into Philip Marlowe. That turned into just a zest for reading, like Josh was saying, new authors. And like, we started with this idea of taking a look at each kind of big detective, but then it kind of branched off into other things. And it's just kind of what it is now, that we just, we keep going at it with different angles and flavors and tastes of things that we enjoy. So it was really nice of you to say that you enjoyed that episode on Simenon, because I think, at the heart of it, we got a pretty low profile online. Part of that is deliberate because of our day jobs, because of our own kind of interest in what we want. So anytime we get to meet up with someone like yourself is really cool. And
absolutely,
it's good that our podcast is finding people like yourself who have great taste in reading good stories,
Yes, agreed. I would also like to point out that I still have never read a Sherlock Holmes story.
Okay, so it wasn't just me then. That's good to know.
I have this issue where I always avoid what's popular and try to read what's not popular. Like I find that more appealing for some reason. So I know, but it is embarrassing, right? When you say it out loud, you're like, here I am talking about books online. Haven't even read Sherlock Holmes.
I mean, you're in the same place I was a few years back, and I kind of teach some of the Holmes stories now, and I've gotten to love them that way, and I've gotten to learn a lot more about Conan Doyle and his family and his history and stuff that way too. And there are links, kind of obviously in the country I'm working and living in Scotland. There are links there to the Doyle family and stories that he produced and whatnot. So it was a good little adventure for me, and I'm delighted that Josh came on board. And yeah, this is kind of our thing, right? It's just what we do now in our spare time when we're not dealing with family or, jobs or whatever. So it's fun. It's good.
It's your episodes are, like I said, I was floored by them. When I first heard them, I just went in expecting a regular review, and it's so in depth. I've never run across anyone else who does such deep dives on these reviews, and I was especially floored by Josh, your summary, your author bios, which you call fast facts, which is hilarious because like here's my fast fact. You see that paragraph right there? Yeah. That's my Simenon. When I was doing the review, that's what I had, and I'm like ready to go. Like, I researched this, and I listened to your episode. I was
I think fast facts was Scott's sarcastic term for my histories. Because
I don't know. We did try to keep it to like 15 points at one point, and then we just gave up because Josh is a wild horse off the leash, man. He just goes.
I feel that term got taken away with when we were doing the Childers, when we're doing the Riddle in the Sands, because here's the fast facts, and it's like a 2-hour episode. 2 hours of the episode is devoted to Childers' history.
I know, but it was also good. I didn't want to cut any of that stuff out.
I know.
Yeah, that was a fun read. But you know what? Like, you're onto something, buddy, because like behind the scenes, the production of the shows, like it takes a while to get going. Anybody listening and watching who does what you do in YouTube or us, podcasting, they know how much work goes into it and the editing stuff. But Josh does a bang up job on those fast facts, segments. He really does. He likes doing it. He likes the history. I mean, I've just finished editing the Sunset Boulevard episode he's done for the Noir channel, kind of channel pathway on our show. And I mean, that must be a 45-minute spot on the history of that film, Billy Wilder. It's a good episode. And sometimes he does knock one out the park. And then other times I'm like, come on, Josh, you could have said that in 15 minutes, dude, But hey, it is what it is.
Disclaimer, I love history. I love the story behind things, and I like delving into history. And the fact that, when you read about these famous authors and how they lived in these very different times that we lived in, but how they also, had the same situations that we have in the modern day. Some of them had bad marriages. Some of them had had their picadillos as well. Like I love the humanity of it all. And that's what makes me interested in history, is the course of these big events being driven by people's, reactions to things around them, to the stimuli around them, that creates, all these situations that lead into what we call history. And authors are a big part of that, 100%, because they define culture as they write. And you may think like someone back then writing a novel, some no name, or they might have thought themselves as a no name, and then they die of tuberculosis 10 years later, and then 25 or 30 years later, all of a sudden they're like revered for writing that someone discovers. And how many of them are out there that no one's discovered the manuscripts yet? And that's why I find the whole connection between history and literature very fascinating.
And how you relate what went on in the author's life to what is being put into the book, the ideas, the world going on around them at the time. It really opened my eyes, kind of, because I've done author bios and reviews before, and it's just kind of like an overview, like, yeah, here's kind of who this was, who wrote this. But the way you do it is almost like a Maigret style, like a psychological study, and you're breaking down like this author.
Yeah, I definitely, Simenon was definitely a feast for the psychoanalytic part. That's for sure. I mean, how many au pairs did he sleep with, or like, but a very fascinating individual too. Like he's one of those situations where he believed in tradition, he believed in conservative, but he was also as a young person, very wild and rambunctious. Like he was a delinquent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that somehow something sharpened him up or whatever. But I still think he continued that childlike delinquency, into his adulthood as well. But I think it also gave him a view on how how people work. And I think that's how he was able to make Maigret, the prism to reflect that when he's having all these suspects and witnesses and individuals involved in the cases and how they all tie together, So, I just look for things like that. I just look for those connections and I make them myself. I don't say that this is exactly what's happened. If you disagree with my interpretation, that's perfectly fine. But I just look for those connections. That's what I'm looking for patterns, I suppose.
Yeah, it's impressive. And also impressive is the summaries you guys do, where they are like, they're almost a story in themselves. Like the way you write them is literary.
Yeah. And I haven't. Yeah, well, I've got one for this today. I mean, we can use it however you like. But I try to keep them a bit shorter. Sometimes you get carried away. It's just like anything else you get interested in, right? Like you sometimes have a hard time, but then like kind of reining it in. But when you get started on a tone or on like a rhythm, I guess it's a bit. You just want to keep going with that. You want to ride that a bit until you're finished, and then, like I said, like this show and it's for posterity. We're not making money off it. We're not profiting from any of this stuff. So we might as well make it what we want and what we'd like to listen to. And I get it that it's not pocket sized all the time for listeners, but if it gives people the deep dive that they're looking for, because there is that audience out there, they really appreciate that. So that's great. People can check out some other shows that are a little more brief in that type of stuff if that's what they're after too. So it's really whatever you like, but we like what we do, and we're really glad, Nick, that you carried us on here today to talk this one with you.
Yeah, this is awesome, Nick. This we're glad to be here. Like this is really exciting. Our first YouTube experience. But at the same time, like I'm glad that people out there, like yourself, are appreciating the work that we're doing, because that just makes it even better. That people are listening to what we're talking about, and it's not that sense like, oh, I want to be remembered, or I want like this is a hobby for us. We enjoy it. We love reading, and we like talking about books and breaking things down. We've been like that since our early 20s or even before. And this is just a way for us to, like just relax and enjoy our hobbies. Like I can't put it any other way than that.
Why isn't it on YouTube? It's streaming everywhere else.
I don't know, dude. It's probably my fault, to be perfectly honest, or my responsibility, because I'm the guy that does the kind of the editing and that side of things. Neither Josh nor I. Well, yeah, but neither Josh nor I started kind of thinking about profile, like making it a big thing. I don't know if it's. I don't really know why, to be honest. I don't have a good answer for you. I don't have a satisfying answer for you. I don't know why it's not. To be honest.
I follow a lot of YouTube reactions, like for like movies and TV shows that I enjoy. I like to see people's reactions to it, so I follow the usual reactors. And then I see, for example, like for some particular IP that they're covering, and then you go and there's the comments section, and I'm like, that's something you got to kind of like.
There you go. I defer to my colleague here.
Something you have to kind of adjust, I think, and congratulations, for you going into this, and like you've been doing it for some time, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
And perhaps this is something this is the next step for lighting the pipes.
Yeah, that'd be great. And number one, never worry about the comment section, because you have this power right here that deletes whatever you want.
That's right, yeah. That's a good power.
You take their power away. They have no voice. Okay. So you had something negative to say, you're out of here, buddy.
Yeah, you're out of here.
I think more people should do that.
That's a good shout. That's
a much better world.
But this is also a very much different channel than those other reactor channels that I've seen, right? Like this is about people, reacting to some popular culture thing, and it's like basically a TV show or a movie, and then they have their own takes on things and their discussions, and then so this is a quite different thing, I think, where the audiences for these types of shows like yours, like Lighting the Pipes, could be on YouTube, I think, are a little different than the regular channels, if you know what I mean.
Well, you guys are also very fair when you don't like something. You point out what's good. You point out the good aspects, and then you say, "I didn't really like this." You know, you wouldn't just be coming on here and just shitting all over it, shitting all over someone's favorite character, and then they might lose it on you. But
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's funny how when we're reviewing our book and like, didn't we? And then I look at the scoring, I'm like, I enjoyed this book. Why is it almost like 55% in our scoring? You know, like it's just. Yeah. I think there's a difference between, formal analysis of a text versus, your personal enjoyment of it. Like I can go out there and, I can go read like, any classic issue of like, Uncanny X-Men or something like that and go, I enjoy that. That's fun. But man, there's a lot of stupid shit in this story. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like, I still enjoyed the experience of reading something or watching something, even if it's not great, like if I'm entertained by it, that's good. And I think there's and things aren't necessarily meant to be like Pulitzer Prize winning literature. Like people just want to write a book, make some money off it, and go on. And if they leave like a whole bunch of those books and the books are somewhat interesting or tell different ideas, then I'm not going to be too concerned, that it's not like, like not winning the Edgar Award. You know what I mean? So
next, we're going to do this in the style that you guys do your episodes, because I want people from YouTube that normally just watch YouTube, I am hoping that they will venture over into another avenue and go check you guys out, because you're missing out if you're not watching it, if you're not listening to watching it. See, I'm used to YouTube. If you're not listening to it, and it's, you walk away learning a lot about the authors and the books, and it makes you kind of look at books that you've read in a different way. You guys did more of a taste for Bones. You felt, I did it with my friends that I do the book reviews here, and we felt pretty much exactly how you guys did. Not a fan, okay. But some people some of our guests liked it. So in the Morbid Taste for Bones, right? Even though I still wasn't really a fan, the way that you compared it, the way you took the Holy Wars, described the Holy Wars, what the character of Brother Cadfael would have went through, and then compared it to how he acts in the story, you made me question whether I was wrong. Right there. Oh, wow. And then we get to the end of the episode, you guys were like, that was terrible. I was like, no, okay, I'm still good. I was just so impressed by the historical background and how you associated the character with what he went through in this supposed real life. Very impressive.
The amateur historian in me was kind of like reading that book going like, it was just triggering me because like, oh boy, the Crusades, I know what this guy went through. I have an idea about, the battles that he would have fought and everything like that. Right. So I went in to go do a few details because I felt that was the best way that I could contribute to the story and to make the story exciting to people, is to kind of bring on that background. So it's not just like some monk solving a case. Right. Because I remember years ago, there was a Simpsons episode that made fun of Cadfael. And it goes, and it was just some guy before like a bishop or a pope or something. It was a pope, and he basically said like, next on P.B.S. here is, and there's, it was very Cadfaelish, right? Because I remember seeing like the P.B.S. episodes in pieces when I was younger, when they showed them, and it was just like, the guy's, trying to offer his apologies to the Pope or whatever. He's like, not with this Pope. And guys like, ugh. And they're just like, that's what Cadfael reminded me of. And that's when I heard that there was a whole bunch of books, in that sense. That's why we were interested in because it was a mystery novel. We were interested in taking it on. But I threw on that historical dimension and elaborated as I usually do on things.
No, it was excellent, and you made me want to read more of it. You made me be like, well, hold on a second. Like, if this character is going to grow from what you said that they just went through, like the possibility is there, then I'm like, I kind of want to see what a later one is like. See if it relates to the time in the Holy War. So what I'm saying is, to you listeners out there, go listen to their podcast. Just to enjoy. It's enjoyable. It's educational. And if you are a reviewer, go listen to it, because it will either A, inspire you to try harder, or B, make you want to quit.
Oh, that's too nice. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Great. That's great.
I mean, everything you say is absolutely true, but still, false modesty and all that, you know.
Yeah, of course, always.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so according to your game plan here, here's where we do the fast facts.
Yeah, fast
about the fast facts about the author. And Josh, you usually lead these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just dive right in. So, but yeah, Simenon, he was born Georges Joseph Simenon of Belgian Walloon, which is like a Flemish kind of ancestry, in Liège, Wallonia, in Belgium, either February 12th or February 13th, 1903. His father was an accountant. His father's name was Desiree. I think that's how you pronounce it. And he was an accountant with an insurance firm. And Simenon was a big fan of his father. He admired him up until his death in 1921. He was very close to his father. And not so much with his mother, because his mother was a devout Roman Catholic. That wasn't a thing against her. But she seemed to prefer her second-born son, Christian, who was born sometime afterwards, more so than him. So maybe she was kind of an interesting dynamic there. I don't know. And that's a resentment that he carried into his life, as like losing this only child status. Or is it here? In terms of education, he was reading as of age 3, enrolled in the École Gardienne that was run by the Sisters of Notre Dame. Following that, his childhood education ran from 1908 to 1914, where he attended the Christian Brothers Institut Saint-André. I apologize for my French pronunciation.
Wait till we get to it, because there's going to be a lot more of it coming from this one right here.
I've grown better at it, but sometimes the old slip-ups still happen sometimes, you know. His later childhood and probably the rest of his life was shaped by the outbreak of the First World War in 1914. In 1911, the Simenons had taken in lodgers. These were mostly students and refugees that were coming from Eastern Europe, and most of these were Jews. This gave him his first cosmopolitan exposure, which he would put into his journalistic writings and his own fiction. During the war, Belgium was, of course, occupied by the Germans, who were quartered into his home. For some reason, Simenon had described this period as the best time of his life.
I remember you saying that, actually.
Yeah. In this period, his mother and father had a rocky relationship. They were cheating on each other. They moved into smaller quarters when things got tough. To keep the life he had known going, he would result in petty theft to maintain the luxuries he had lost living with his parents. So he was truant in his Jesuit high school, and a year later at the Collège Saint-Servais as well. Even though he managed to excel in French, but nothing else. By French, I mean not like the language French, because obviously he spoke it, because he was but in terms of like what we call English class, on our end. So he was
literature and language studies.
And language studies, exactly. So he kept to writing even during this time when he was like just petty thieving around the place, after being a pain in the ass after school. And he explored the classics like the Russians, the French, English literature as well. And eventually it came to a point where, to support his family, he had to go to college. He had to leave college and work at which he was just starting out with. And he had to work at a patisserie and a bookshop. So he was working for a bakery and he was working, in a bookstore just to make ends meet for his family. Then the war ended in November 1918. So all the rationing stopped and, everything was going back to normal. But he found himself unemployed and then exposed to local instances of violent retribution against Liège residents who were accused of collaborating with the enemy. And he's said to have been haunted by this incident for the rest of his life. So we have a troubled childhood, a juvenile delinquent coming to manhood during the war and after, exposed to some of the horrors of that period. That would shape one's perspective of the world. The perspective was honed when he got a job for the Gazette de Liège, a right-wing Catholic newspaper. He became proficient at his writing. He was promoted to crime reporting and eventually a columnist. And he dealt with opinion as well as gossip. Those departments were also using him. And because of this, he would get interviews with famous people like Hirohito, the crown prince of Japan at the time, and the French war hero Marshal Foch. To improve his proficiency in crime reporting, he took a course in forensic science at the University of Liège from 1920 to 1921. So now he's basically building his background, which would take him in to be able to give you that procedural, realistic feel, the Maigret novels have presented to us. His cosmopolitan experiences took a new level when he joined Le Cac, or Herring Barrel, which is a group of young artists and bohemians, and they would just drink, talk literature together, philosophy, experiment with drugs, even like cocaine and morphine. Kind of so like, what Aldous Huxley would do, he wrote a whole book about that, about the LSD and whatnot. And so it was he was in a very interesting crowd, Simenon here. And I think that, again, not just like his experiences during the war, but and after, and having to live on his own and whatnot, and get exposed to, as I said, cosmopolitan elements. But here he was also taking on different ideas and concepts and doing things like, that people would get arrested for, like drugs, for example, or stealing. So I think in many ways, this is shaping, again, how he's able to create very realistic sketches of people in the world, and that Maigret navigates. Through this crowd, he met a young painter named Regine Rechon, and that eventually becomes his wife. They got married in 1922, December-ish, because he moved to Paris and gained work with the right-wing political group there, just working on pamphlets. It was meager secretarial work, but it was enough to support a marriage. By this point, he was done with the Gazette, and he continued to write and work when he could. His somewhat preeminence allowed him to get a position with the Marquis de Tracy as a secretary. It allowed him access to the Marquis's many estate holdings. And this connection is probably what got him hooked up with the Parisian newspaper Le Matin. Because at the time, the writer-playwright Colette, she was the famous writer of Gigi, the play Gigi. She was able to see what he was writing and scrutinize, to take a look at it. She was able to see what he was working on. So she told him to simplify. She said, only use a lexicon of so many words and use basic descriptions in his writing. He did so, and his work became more prolific with his submissions to the newspaper. By 1924, he was on his own. He was no longer working for the Marquis, and he was turning to pulp novels. And it was that summer of 1925 that he mentioned he met Henriette Laberge on vacation in Normandy. This woman, he was with Regine on vacation, and this woman Henriette, she was like a fisherman's daughter, and they brought her in as a housekeeper in Paris. And there was also another person, and this person, Laberge, later known as Boule, they would become lovers, Simenon and her. And as I said, she would not be his last affair. Following that, he worked with African-American singer-actress Josephine Baker as an assistant on her magazine that she was publishing in Paris, and he had an affair with her as well. The tryst was severed when the Simenons, Boule, that is the fisherman's daughter I was talking about, who was their housekeeper. They included they took a 6-month tour of the rivers and canals of France. So by the time he returned from that journey, the affair was over, and he decided to travel more. And so as he was doing this, he was submitting more popular pulp novels. This is way before he started writing Maigret. He was already making money off pulp novels using the publisher Fayard, which is the publisher that published the majority of the Maigret novels. Basically, using the suggestion of Colette to limit this vocabulary, his output had increased from 11 in 1927 to 44 books in 1928, averaging 80 pages a day.
That's
so,
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't even, and some of these novels, I mean, they can't probably be found anymore either, right? They could have been lost, over time and whatnot, because we only have like what's available, the extent that's available from that's existed over time. But he wrote a lot, Simenon, and not just the Maigret novels, which he wrote a lot of too. The output continued when they embarked on their custom sailboat, the Ostrogoth, to northern France, also to northern Belgium and Holland. So they took the whole tour there essentially. He was heavily influenced by his beloved father. His most famous creation, the detective character, Jules Maigret, first appeared in 3 pulp novels that he wrote during this time, though only one of them, Train de Nuit, Night Train, was accepted by his publisher. It was a faint sketch of what the character would become. So when the Ostrograph put in for repairs in the Dutch city of Defsigel, Simenon fleshed out Maigret's character and his world. And I understand you can go to Defsigel and there's actually a statue of Maigret there. Yeah, so then we have Peter the Latvian, published in 1930. It marked the official debut of Maigret. It was serialized first in Fayard's magazine Rick et Rack and eventually expanded to novel form in 1931. Yeah, so what they have here is essentially between 29 and 33. Simenon wrote 19 Maigret novels, and we talked about the statue that was commissioned years later afterwards. The novel Maigret, published, I think it's called Maigret. It published in June 1933, and was intended to be his last Maigret novel because he wished to explore other facets of writing. He used this to go on an adventure, just touring the world. He had a brother his brother Christian, he lived in the Belgian Congo, and when he went there to visit his brother, he took this to express his critical view of colonialism, which he also explored in his fiction novels and journalism. And again, we have this resentment of his mother's favorite. Like, basically, his brother is part of the Belgian government. He's in the Congo representing, doing his job, and his brother shows up, and he's just all bitter. And, that's that friction in the relationship is there. And then he basically just, trashes everything that he's doing there, like in his writings. So, and
he had a chip on his shoulder, did our buddy Simenon.
He definitely did. It seemed he was definitely wary of authority figures. Like, his main goal, like, he wanted to write. And when he moved over to a new publisher, Gallimard, where he started to write, do different forms of writing, he had this goal where he wanted to win the Nobel Prize for Literature by 1947. That was a goal that he set for himself. And following this world tour, where he went to South America, East Indies, Australia, India, he took up a really, let's just say, a sumptuous life of luxury. And he had to move out of the wealth. He had to he spent so much money there that he couldn't afford anything, that he had to move out of the wealthy district in Paris to La Rochelle. And that's where he had his first child, Mark, who was born in 1939, just as the war broke out. And then we have information of how La Rochelle became the reception center for the massive Belgian refugees that came pouring into France at the start of World War II. The Belgian government designated him as commissionaire for refugees, managing thousands and thousands of people. So he handled their food and healthcare, all the accommodations. So when they had been expatriated and France was under Vichy control, he then returned to his writings and to Maigret. Because he was non-Jewish, he stayed away from recent politics, so that way his writings would have very little obstacles. He wanted to be neutral as possible in that sense. And this is when you see some of his film rights start getting sold. And one of the companies the studios that bought his rights was Continental Films. And these were actually in turn funded by the Vichy government. And they wouldn't allow, for example, any Jewish people to work as crew or actors or writers or anything involved in the production of these movies. One of his adaptations, a book he wrote called Strangers in the House, they even exaggerated the anti-Semitic themes that weren't present in the novel at all. And the resistance in France looked at Simenon as a possible, collaborator in this sense. At the end of the war, he was excused. He was acquitted, but that kind of stayed with him in that sense. Following that, he separated from his wife and son. They stayed at La Rochelle. He was, as I mentioned, he was very untrustworthy of communist government, of leftist government. He was feeling that French after the war was becoming very left-wing. De Gaulle was in, and all the resistant fighters were in control then at that point. And he decided that he wanted to move the family to the increasingly conservative post-war United States. Regine, his wife, would agree to go with him, but his housekeeper, lover, Boule, she had to remain in France. So he agreed. And they first took up in Canada, in just outside of Montreal, north of Montreal, I should say. And he hired a secretary, a woman, a local named Denise Quimay, and she became his new paramour. And she moved into the home in 1946, and they lived in various parts of Canada, but eventually settled in Arizona in the U.S. And Boole was then joined them. She came back from France and joined them.
Hang on, I got to stop you there, dude. I know we've already been through this once.
I know. But I think it's juicy information, man. You gotta love it. You gotta love it.
Okay, great. I don't have to love it, but I do need to get it. I got to order up the dominoes here. So he's with his wife north of Montreal, meets a new housekeeper or au pair or whatever. No, because right.
The first was a house. Yeah, au pair was the wrong word to use, but
yes, it was. Right, but I got it. Then his mistress, essentially from France, comes across. So is he with all these women under the same roof?
Yes. So you have Regine, his wife.
And
then you have his son Mark, who's.
What were those dinners like? Like I can't conceive of the cross conflict, and I mean open relationships, whatever. But something tells me that Simenon was having his way, and that the agency wasn't being returned from the wife or the mistress, and it's just a heck of a story there. Yeah.
What's crazy is when you read more of the Maigret stories, he has this very loving relationship with his wife. It's very sweet, and it's like
interesting.
Maigret's eyes never strays. He never even really crosses his mind.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, Nick. Because in Headless Corpse, there are some touching moments with his wife, even if they're fleeting. They are real and they're there. Obviously, his wife's nowhere to be seen in this book that we're going to talk about shortly. But that's interesting. So. There is maybe a bit of that. And would you think of it as kind of like the author wanting to have done better, or was that too much projection? Is that too much projection?
It's a good point.
I don't know, because when I looked up Simenon and I first saw that, I was really surprised, because that was one of the aspects that I really liked about Maigret, is that it is this like very real, like a good example of a loving relationship, a healthy, loving relationship. And then you go and learn, and he's just like, banging the nanny, and you're like,
He skewed all
where
that.
did this come from?
That's something else.
And then you say his parents were arguing, and it's the greatest time of his life, this turmoil.
Yeah.
And he's writing this like super loving, romantic relationship into his stories. And I'm just like, yeah, maybe it was something that he dreamed of. He's like, I wish I had this other life,
this form of escapism in many ways, And if you think about it, like, I mean, Maigret is a detective. He's a member of the police force. He is going after people, who commit crimes and whatnot. So maybe that's like his own projection of his own guilt, And Maigret is the one that solves that guilt, I suppose.
Maybe he uses him as a tool to reconcile his own remorse or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, we talked about Ian Fleming on our show before many times, and how, for example, Fleming pretty much created James Bond to be the super version of himself that he couldn't be, right? So it's, it's the author puts their dreams and their hopes and the better versions of themselves into the writing. And I mean, that just goes with any kind of art where the creator makes great work, but the person themselves, not the greatest person. But I mean, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's the humanity of it all. It's the honesty of it in that sense. In regards to this relationship, though, the straw that broke the camel's back was the announcement of Denise. So this is his French-Canadian secretary that he's hired, who's became on his lover, and they're all living under this house now in Arizona. She got pregnant. And so at this point, Regine, she asks for a divorce, and a son from that encounters, John was born. When the divorce was granted in Nevada, he married Denise the following day and moved to Lakeville, Connecticut. He lived there for 5 years and wrote 12 Maigret novels and 14 other novels, including La Morte de Belle and The Watchmaker of Everton. He was then elected president of Mystery Writers of America. Despite this acceptance, after a trip to Europe in 52 and 54, he decided not to return. So he found out that Europe had not forgotten him, that there was still a base for his work there, for his writings. So in 1952, he was admitted into the Royal Belgian Academy, which basically makes his work even more prestigious. And in 53, Denise gave birth to a daughter, Marie Jo, and Boule moved in with them and became lovers again. At this point, though, Regine was not in the picture. In France, Simenon continued to write. He lived near Cannes with Regine and Marc. They lived nearby. So they weren't in the same house anymore, but they were still living nearby because I guess he wanted access to his son and whatnot. And maybe there was a civil relationship between Regine and Simenon. I don't know the details on that, unfortunately. And Denise had a third child, Pierre. And in 61, and it's some kind of, cyclical Sisyphean loop, Denise employs a housemaid, an Italian named Teresa Cerbellin.
Right.
And
I can see where this is going. Do you want to, hey, before we go, anybody want to put cards on the table, throw some money at it? Yeah, ante up.
It feels Simenon becomes every suspect in his novels almost. You know what I mean? Like a Les Palmeraie, or what's the name of the guy in the Headless Corpse? The murdered wine bar owner, right? The bistro owner.
That's right. Yeah.
Anyways, this one would stick because she stayed on until the very end. Denise, however, she got into drinking very heavily. Their marriage fell apart. Simenon also fell apart and mentally too. Their relationship even became abusive to a point where he did hit her. And then afterwards, she was committed. To a mental health clinic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. Because that adds up, right? Because obviously, she's just having brain fever, and her husband, who she already usurped from a previous marriage to marry him, is now having an affair, and she's getting she's getting sort of, her just desserts in that regard. There's a bit of karma in play, but sending her to a mental health clinic, I mean, that's a sign of the times, obviously.
What year was that?
1964.
64.
Yeah. She was gone by that point. Boulay was also no longer there. She lived with Marc, who was married with his own kids. Now, I don't know what happened with Boule and Marc. I'm assuming that she's just a maid, and that was just someone from his childhood who he sees as like a third mother, probably. I don't know, but hopefully that's all that happened between them. That's all I have to say. Because
we don't want to
know. In a lot over the course of this narrative.
The less known, the better.
Yeah.
About that particularly.
Yeah.
It gets ugly there, huh?
Yeah.
His last wife, I take it she didn't hire the help.
Yeah.
And that's why it lasts. You're like, oh, they stayed together forever. She's like, I got this figured out, guys.
Yeah. She broke the cycle. She broke the cycle.
Yeah, the Sisyphean loop was cut.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. In 73, he retired from writing, and then he with Teresa, they moved to Lausanne. And Marie Jo, tragically in 1978, in May, that's his daughter with Denise, she committed suicide, and she was only 25 years old, and this utterly devastated him. He had almost I guess, a stroke of some kind, and there was an operation in 1984 where he could hardly walk anymore. And I guess when he was trying to move around or what have you, he had a fall. And in September 1989, he succumbed to those injuries. So that's the life of Georges Simenon, the creator of Maigret. It was definitely an interesting life, but the output of this guy's work in terms of, so many classics of modern French literature, 75 Maigret novels, 28 short stories, 117 literary novels outside of that.
That's
hard
impressive.
Novels, he called them, romandeurs. He led a varied life, bolstered by his experiences in his youth and early adulthood. And as I said, I think it shaped the man that he became, the writer that he became. And you can pick up any one of his books, or at least the two that I read, and you can kind of to me, I see this. I see psychologically how this could have, produced this in a sense. And Scott really nailed it when he talked about the projection thing, about him, using Maigret to be the better version of himself. That's a really interesting theory. Very interesting.
It's also interesting too, though, like Nick, what you were saying about being lost in translation. I know, like when you're doing research, you can't always access the sources or the materials because of the French language barrier. But see, even if we, pardon me, even if we were French speakers, right, like native French speakers in Canada or United States or whatever, we probably still would be distanced from just how big a figure he is in French art and in continental Europe. Because Josh, how many novels did you say outside of Maigret? 117 or something? Or was that the total?
I think that was this. Just hold on a second here. I'm just going back to that now. Just a moment.
Well, regardless.
Yeah, so 28 short stories, 28 short stories, and 117 literary novels outside of Maigret.
I don't think we would even be able to access that, even if we understood. It's like a guy who in his own nation is he's just he's a titan, isn't he? He's just a titan, a writing titan.
Yeah. He was famous right off the bat, right? I mean, he was making lots of money off of this.
Yeah, he certainly was.
He was. I would say, in terms of Belgian literature, like to me, like the only other Belgian person that I know, like in terms of literary success, and not literature, because the guy created comic books essentially, is Georges, the creator of Tintin. If you know those Tintin comic books, right? And that's a completely Belgian creation as well. So those Simenon and this, obviously Simenon did much more than Georges did in the literary field, though, because he also wrote outside of his usual detective genre. He also wrote, other examples of nonfiction, and he also had journalistic and philosophic articles that he wrote too. So,
well, maybe Georges did as well.
Maybe I don't know too much about Georges, except that's the only example of a Belgian author I knew before Simenon. So,
yeah, the first
there you
time
go, Nick. You asked for it. You got it. You got the Josh. You got the LTP Josh treatment on that one, buddy.
Yeah,
that was good. I want people to hear. I want people to hear it because it really does make you take a different look at these books. There's a difference between just casually reading it and enjoying it. And then stepping back and seeing the background and seeing what all goes into it, to how this thing came to be created and what it was. And it's just amazing. It's amazing that you break them down like this and really pointed it out. But at the same time, I also kind of just want sometimes just to enjoy the stories,
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's when I got to a point now where I'm doing so many of these, where I'm thinking like, going into something blind, there's nothing wrong with that. And then you make your own decisions about things, right? That's and right. I guess I'm just I'm a very kind of like, I guess, anal retentive person where I need to know all the facts. You know what I mean? I need to
as much as you can, anyway.
Yeah, and that's just me, because I'm always hungry for information all the time. Like I'm always looking for new knowledge on things and absorbing information, right? So that's just me personally. And if people enjoy those backgrounds and it helps them transcend their usual reading experience, then great.
Yeah, and I've said, Josh, I've always said this, jokes aside, I've always said that the bits of the show that I enjoy the most are the bits when, I love our chats about the books and our scoring to see what you thought of it and did we share similar things, but I always like the fact that we do our summary and our fast facts in isolation, because I don't know the stuff that Josh is digging in. He doesn't know how I'm going to spin the yarn. So I always like the bits we do before the review, because it is fun for me just to sit back and listen. But, in fairness, Nick, I think as well, like we do try to timestamp our episodes. So people who don't want those deep dives, they can just skip, they can skip to where we just get to our scoring, if that's what they're into.
Yeah. I think everyone should definitely hear it. Everyone should definitely listen to it. It's amazing. The work you put into it is just incredible.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much. I was gonna say, speaking of summary.
Speaking of, yes. See, you got the segue down. You can tell I'm used to just talking to myself. Cut there.
Do you got anything you want to say, pal? Like, obviously I'm ready to read my summary, but like, is there anything, because I'm interested in how many of these you've read. Like, I know you said you got some of that stuff for your principles, but like, how well read are you in the Maigret books? Because Josh and I are newbies to this, ultimately.
This is the seventh one that I've read, but I've also, I got the movies. If you guys have, so I got
nice one.
The
Oh,
Kino
wow.
Lorber's,
I've
Kino
not
Lorber's
seen-
great. I
these
love
are-
it for my film noir 1930s stuff I've been going through.
and
That's
these are
great.
the French produced ones. So
Oh, cool.
Jean Gabin, right?
yes,
Nice.
and to me, like that, this is where I first heard of Maigret. They were having their Kino Lorber was having their noir November sale or whatever. I just went in and bought a bunch of stuff that I thought looked interesting, and I had never heard of this character before. And then I got it, and I loved it so much that
I'm gonna check that stuff out.
I'm gonna
That's
check
really
that out because one of the first films I saw and when I did film studies in university back in the early 2000s was this movie called Pepe Le Moco, and Jean Gabin was in that. It was like a French what you call French poetic realism movement that occurred like in the mid 1930s around that time period. It's kind of a predecessor of film noir because it kind of built from German expressionism, in the 20s. It kind of and the poetic realism was an example of that, where they had these very kind of hazy, ambiguously moral kind of crime stories that were very based on American crime fiction that they put into, and Gabin was one of the big like players in that, right? Like he did a lot of those detective movies, crime thrillers and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when I saw that he played Maigret, I'm like, well, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's wonderful. So whenever I have a tainted view of Maigret, because he is Maigret to me, he's the first I ever heard of it. Mm-hmm. So when I picture it, that's what I picture. I picture all of his mannerisms, his shrugs, the way he looks, the way he looks at people, the way he interacts. So yeah, that's how I first heard of it, and then I got some books, and I was blown away that it was so huge everywhere else. I was like, how have I never even heard this name before?
Yeah.
And then
what was your first book that you did of the series?
The first book I read was I think it was the Nahor case.
Okay.
I think it was this one. This is one of the more unexciting covers.
It looks very 1980s-ish.
But yeah, so then I was like, oh, I love this. I liked the lack of kind of emotion that he has. He, like it's a psychological study. It's not. It's not. So everything I know of Sherlock Holmes is also from a movie. So, where he studies facts, these are the clues. This is, one thing leads to another. And in Maigret, it was very different because he was more like just watching people. Yeah. And I thought it was really interesting how different it was. Yeah. And I really liked how French it was. I was also surprised to see that he was not French, Georges Simenon. Yeah. Like this is the most French thing I've ever seen. And then, like you said, the British, all the British editions, the shows, and he's like, yeah, they're in France, but they're at the British accents. And it took a second for me to accept. I was like, no. I was like, nope, this is not Maigret.
Yeah,
Rich.
I think I read, what is it, Rowan Atkinson, like Mr. Bean himself plays Maigret, like in a miniseries they did like in the 2000, I guess late teens. 2000 teens, but I can't imagine that him is Maigret. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I haven't. Those are the ones I haven't seen. There's so much out there that it'd be a lot to go hunt it all down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely compared to say like what's the one that we did recently, Scott? Philo Vance, right? That's a character that kind of just stopped completely in pop culture memory after the 1940s. Yeah. Like after that,
I can see why as well.
Yeah. That was in my initial description of your podcast. I was like, all these guys, they're very collegiate. They have a very huge vocabulary, but there's also like dudes and fucks. And I believe in the Philo Vance, you're like, this guy's a fucking jerk.
Well,
I was like,
all a spade is spade there. Yeah.
Absolutely,
for sure, man.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think, guys? You want me to whip out the summary then, and we'll see how we do?
Sounds good.
All right, cool. So we're talking the Yellow Dog today, and we're not entirely sure whether it's 5th or 6th on the the Maigret 1931 train, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood anyway. So at any point you want to jump in with a comment or a question or, a correction, maybe I've got something wrong, please do that. Okay. I want to get all this right. But okay, so I'll just take you through it. The plot summary on The Yellow Dog. The sleepy calm on Carcano, Brittany is shattered by a disturbing incident. A respected wine merchant, Monsieur Mostagun, is shot in a doorway while returning innocently from the pub in the closing minutes of a foggy November night. The only clue seems to be that witnesses recall a strange yellow dog lurking nearby. Inspector Jules Maigret is dispatched from Paris to investigate. So begins Simenon's sixth, maybe fifth, Maigret story, The Yellow Dog. When he arrives, Maigret is met by a secretive bourgeois group centered around the Admiral Hotel and its buzzing cafe. Sensing its importance, Maigret wastes no time in setting up there, and before the investigation properly begins, from a forensic point of view at least, Maigret has begun studying the locals and planting the seeds of early observation in that fertile soil of his mind. The location becomes something of an epicenter for communications and meal-taking throughout the novel. Given its proximity to both the crime and figures of interest, Maigret and his junior inspector Leroy make a home for themselves there. Three men who hold court in the hotel cafe take up the reader's attention in the early going, watched as they are by Maigret's calculating but genial gaze. By name, they are Dr. Ernest Michaud, Jean Servier, and Monsieur de Pomerat. Le Pomerat, correction. Each is, I think, worth a little introduction here, guys. Michaud is a doctor, but not a practicing one. He left medicine to start in the real estate game, which has enabled some meager financial comfort and a bit of social sway with the town's middle class. Then there's Servier, who changed his name from Jean Goyard to fit his journalism career. The names become interchangeable in the story, though. Like Michaud, he's also grown used to an entitlement, and he enjoys being known as a factor around Concarneau. The final figure of the triptych, Le Pommeret, is perhaps best described as a local statesman, a bit of a womanizer, a schmoozer. He's heavily shielded by people around him. He's wormed his way into France and these kind of political circles, and he's become the region's vice consul to Denmark or something like that. It's a bit vague, but he's basically a professional prat. So we could say that. More interesting, though, than these is the cafe's waitress, Emma, whose anxious yet compelling movements really register with Maigret. Simenon dedicates a fair bit of our attention to the subtleties in her character. She's among the key figures of the novel. First, there's her closeness to the victims and the troubled history of her being used by the trio of patrons amounts to a sexual exploitation that could serve as a motive. Secondly, Maigret is captivated by her behaviors, her secret ties to these men, and finds both intrigue and sympathy in her emotional scars. Her presence around the Admiral Hotel, and Maigret's attention to it, is starkly reminiscent of Madame Callas in Maigret and the Headless Corpse. At least I felt that way. I'd be curious to learn, actually, guys, how many other kind of pensive and twitchy, damaged female bar staff feature in his stories, because the only two Josh and I have had a really good deep look at contain similar sort of figures. I don't know, Nick, like, just before I carry on, are there any other characters like this in the 5 books additional that you've read?
Yeah, the distressed woman put in a difficult position.
Yeah. Well, there's also some autobiographical links there too, I think. Maybe he's thinking about his own housemaids or something,
what he's attracted to.
Yeah, good point. Anyway, guys, it doesn't take long for the town to show its fearful or paranoid personality in the wake of this doorway shooting. Rumors abound as the police investigation gains traction, and sightings of the yellow dog become a bit like Blind Pew's black spot at the Admiral Benbow, in Treasure Island. Everybody's kind of terrified of this stuff. In Ouroboros fashion, the town emits, and I kind of feel like it capitulates to its own Salem-esque energy. But Simenon uses the superstition and the distrust that he builds really effectively to create atmosphere. It becomes clear to us, even 30, 35, 40 pages in, that Maigret's challenge in this story won't just be solving the murder and whatever follows it, but doing so in this particular environment, which is quite febrile. Servier does his part also in ramping up that hysteria by issuing updates to the press through his official channels, but he doesn't really have a lot of time to make mischief. He mysteriously disappears, and his abandoned car is found nearby, its seats smeared with blood. Shortly after, Monsieur Le Pommeraye is found dead, poisoned by strychnine. Maigret chats with his landlady, checks out his apartment, and sees firsthand why his pad is known locally as the House of Depravity. Pornographic images, red lamps, and evidence of bachelor dalliance are just festooned around the cluttered space. Maigret observes all of this quietly, as is his method, and he returns to the Admiral Hotel. By this point, Michaud becomes visibly anxious, out of, I guess, realistic fears that as the only remaining member of his trio, he could be next. The sense of dread intensifies, with more sightings of the yellow dog, which seems to sulk about nearby the shadow of each new crime. This reaches a fever pitch, and Old Yeller predictably becomes the outlet upon which all of the townsfolk vent their distemper. Word reaches Maigret that, and it's Leroy that gives him this word, that the dog has been cornered and shot by a shoemaker in the Old Town Quarter. So the inspector takes it upon himself to walk there and to rescue the wounded animal. Wordlessly, Maigret interrupts the throng, requests a wheelbarrow, and leads it back to the Admiral Hotel. There, he instructs its care from the back of the kitchen. Emma is tacitly put in charge. The dog had become the scapegoat for the people and a symbolic source of recent evil. Though it's injured, it eventually vanishes from the back room, and its disappearance later is explained. Reporters from Paris show up in Concarneau to cover the story, just as the mayor grows more and more critical of Maigret's inertia. Like Mayor Vaughn in Jaws, he just wants a shark hooked so his town can kind of get back to normal business. And
hang up by the Buster Browns.
Yes, that's right. That's what he says, isn't it? Right? Yeah, good.
Greatest villain ever, man.
Yeah, he's a great character. But seriously, like, jokes aside, I do see some kind of similarities here. But anyway, Maigret acquiesces, and he instructs the police to apprehend Jean Michaud. He wants to keep the good doctor safe, yes, but it also limits exposure while Maigret can piece together the truth and start yielding the crop of all those observed seeds. Almost concurrent to Michaud's arrest, a vagrant giant identified as Léon Le Guérec, or Guéret, escapes police custody. Le Guérec is an ex-sailor who recently has returned to Concarneau from America. A local officer travels with Maigret to the watchtower at Cabellou Point, just a short way down the harbor. This dilapidated squat, once resident to an eccentric beggar that died in the war, had shown signs of recent habitation and is where Le Guérec had been hiding out, surrounded by stolen food and wine. Paw prints on the earth floor accompany those giant boot prints spotted elsewhere in the town, and it's fairly evident now that there's more than folklore, to suggest the yellow dog's status as a harbinger of crime. But if this Le Guérec character is responsible for bringing terror to Concarneau, why? What's his game? The shooting of the wine merchant and Le Pommeraye's poisoning? Well, links are difficult to draw. Maigret also learns from the officer about the middle-class set that frequent the Admiral Hotel and appear central to the ongoing drama, as well as how Le Guérec so easily escaped police on the quayside in the ensuing melee. Again and again, the size of the perpetrator is referenced. His hands, his gait, his brutal strength. He's becoming a monster in the townsfolk's imagination. And now that he's free, the people of Concarneau will be more hyped than ever before. On the way back to the Admiral, Maigret stops in at the police barracks and meets with Michaud. And in a passionate appeal, sparked by mounting fear and discernibly flavored with remorse, Michaud apologizes to the inspector for his cowardice and provides biographical excuse and circumstantial evidence to explain his own shortcomings. It's all a bit pathetic and hyperbolic. Maigret leaves the barracks at the precipice of the doctor's emotional breakdown. We might not know exactly what he's thinking, but we can be assured that his visit there has been purposeful in mining more data and adding further observation to this tapestry of personality evidence that he seems to be so heavily leaning towards. A critical scene unfolds soon on the rooftop of the Admiral Hotel. Maigret sends Leroy a secret message asking to meet him up there after dark, and the two inspectors sit high above the square, watching the darkness of the medieval lanes and the buildings beneath them. Finally, Maigret gestures to a flat where candlelight in the window illuminates the colossal form of Le Guerec. He is joined by Emma, who brings a parcel of food. So, the escaped suspect has been hiding out in plain sight. They watch a silent film unfold through the window light. Emma, first appealing to the visibly angry man, his angry remorse, then her proffering herself, and finally the two collapsing in embrace. Simenon questions throughout this stakeout are narrative signposts to us and the inspector of the mystery's deeper waters and motivations. Quote, why was Emma clasping her hands? What could the two of them be saying? What was the subject of their heartbreaking dialogue? Was it now possibly he was saying these words more gently? Wasn't there some faint hope on her haggard face? The two unlikely lovers depart together, Emma clearly looking to join Le Guerec in his final escape, but Leroy and Maigret have other plans. On their way back to the hotel, some commotion informs of another shooting, this time across town. A customs guard was ambushed on his way home from the Admiral. The injury is just a graze, but we know now that the timings couldn't implicate Le Guerec, as they were being watched by Maigret and Leroy. A cable arrives from Paris at nearly the same time, explaining that Servier was picked up by authorities, per Maigret's description of his APD, checking in at the Hotel Bellevue. He's protesting innocence and demanding counsel, but he's being held until Concarneau issues instruction. Now, to us, readers, this flurry of recent events momentarily thickens the plot, but for Maigret, it's actually helping him coalesce these disparate strands. So much so that he orchestrates a gathering of all principal figures inside Michaud's cell in the barracks for a final confrontation. Servier is transported there from Paris, and Le Guerec arrives shackled after again being hauled in by police. In addition, Emma, Michaud's wife, Leroy, and the mayor are all present to hear what Maigret has to say. 5 or 6 years ago, Le Guerec had been betrayed and financially ruined by Servier, Le Pommeraye, and Michaud after agreeing to smuggle some cocaine across the Atlantic and into New York on his boat, the Little Emma. They hired Le Guerec to do the job. The young skipper knew what he was doing was wrong, sure, but everybody was smuggling a little something here or there, and his only dream was to pay off his debts and start a new life with his fiancée, Emma. Well, knowing that they would all profit from his fall, the trio used their American contact to tip off the authorities about Le Guerec's cargo. The Little Emma's crew was unwittingly sailing into a trap, and when they reached New York, the police were already there waiting. 6 years in Sing Sing prison painfully came and went before Leon had a chance at revenge and returned to France. As the years passed, Emma drifted in and out of numbness, dealing with her love loss while becoming a toy for the Admiral Hotel elite, particularly Michaud. When he catches wind of Leon's return, he uses Emma to dictate a letter for him with the signature of E. She has no idea that its message is for her returned fiancé, but Michaud is hoping to draw Leon into the crosshairs before he can extract revenge. Unfortunately, it was Monsieur Mostagain that stumbled drunk into the doorway of the empty house, and not the target that Michaud was expecting. Instead of killing, however, Le Guerec hoped to manipulate terror in the town, which he did, and eventually draw Michaud out into the open as the deeper criminal, which he does. And it nearly works perfectly. Nearly. Aided by panic and concern, the doctor aids suspicion by poisoning his accomplice, Le Pommeraye, when the heat got too much for him. Servier, meanwhile, manufactured a scene to fake his death, but untimely fled to Paris out of fear. There are other features shared, but these are the salient points of the revelation that Maigret conjures out into the open. He apologizes to the mayor for not letting him into his methods sooner, explaining that he needed to play it slow in order to give Michaud, the chief perpetrator, enough rope in time to metaphorically hang himself. In defense of Le Pommeraye's death, Maigret clears his conscience quite briskly. He states, quote, "From what I know of him, I'm convinced that he would have killed himself the moment he was arrested." And speaking of justice, Maigret activates his moral compass and protects Emma big style by pretending to have staged that poisoning attempt at the cafe himself, knowing full well that Emma had legitimately tried to kill Michaud once she discovered why he got her to draft that letter. Moreover, in a parting gesture of compassion, Maigret writes off 400 francs onto his expense account to help Emma and Leon afford train fare and some food as they start up their new life together. By the way, 400 francs then worth about $300 in today's money, for those of you who care about the economy of things like this. In the book's coda, Michaud is reported to have teased out a defense and appeal for his crimes, smugly protesting against his responsibilities, but he's eventually brought to justice, we're told, and sentenced to 20 years servitude on Devil's Island in French Guiana. Le Guerec and Emma have a child and settle in Le Havre, now locally distanced from the bad memories and karma of Concarneau. And that's it. That's the plot of The Yellow Dog.
That was great. Happy ending. Happy ending and all.
Happy ending for everybody, except for the ones who die and Michaud. And Michaud.
And the yellow dog.
Oh, the yellow dog. That's the only death I'm sad about.
That's the only one we're worried about here. Yeah,
I know.
I hear you.
He was the casualty of the whole thing.
He was, yeah.
Old Yeller was a good description there. good
yeah, no, Old Yeller before Old Yeller.
Yeah.
In the summary, did you say that it was Michaud's wife? Wasn't it his
wasn't
mother?
His mum? It's his mother, wasn't it? Yeah, it's his mom. Yeah.
But I think it describes his personality more. To just have
it totally does. Yes,
the spoiled only child living with his mom.
Yeah, and she is something else too. At the start of that scene, like she's hysterical in her defense of him, and like what he needs, like he's still like protected by her, right? Like, don't do anything wrong by my son. He is his medicine. It's his kidneys. He needs to eat this. And, yeah, really weird stuff.
All right, so after the summary. Your guys' normal template here. Then we do the pipes where we discuss the story. This is the review, and I would like you guys to explain what the acronym of the pipes are.
Right. Well, Josh, this is usually your treasured moment.
Well, I think one of the most associated symbols of the detective novel or detective characters has to be, Sherlock Holmes and his pipe, right? So we figured, we were trying to come up with an acronym for scoring, and this, as it turned out, the symbolism works because of the Holmes, thing, but it just fits, I think, in terms of you're breaking down how to review a novel, particularly a mystery novel. I think, it was very serendipitous how it turned out. So PIPES is an acronym, P for principal, or the main character of the story. I for investigation, which is not just like the mystery itself, but also the narrative, the writing style, that sort of thing, the actual caliber of the writing and the strength of the story. Then we have P for perpetrators, which is like the culprits, the antagonists. E for environs. So this can kind of get into the writing of the story again, but it's all about creating atmosphere and how the author creates suspense and tension and sells the mystery to the reader. The last category, S, is simply supporting cast. So we take a look at all the supporting characters in the story and how their presence, impacts the enjoyment of the story as a whole. So each of these is reviewed out of 5 points for a total of 25, in which we then score at the end of our review process.
I love it. It was my first time doing a review like this where everything was sectioned off ahead of time. And I thought that when I imagined it, I was like, oh, this is going to be so much easier. I wish I would have thought of something like this. And then I went to go do it and I was like, wait, does this go here? Is this is this in the principle? Is this like, what is the exact
it can be infuriating sometimes. Yeah, because you kind of fence yourself into stuff, right? And I don't really know why Josh, you and I do this. Like our show could be equally enjoyable just to sit and talk about the books, but we seem to have cornered ourselves now into this ranking thing.
I know,
and we can't escape it. And I actually love it now. But at the start of it, I think it was very linked to the Sherlock Holmes thing. We weren't quite sure where P.I.P.E.S was going to go, you know, where we were going to do with the show after we had finished the 56+4 stories. So at that point, we wanted to do like a little project, because a lot of our stuff in the past together has been project based, right? Like we like to rank what stories do you like the best of this thing, and now it's just grown arms and legs, and it is what it is now. But yeah, we're never going to give up the P.I.P.E.S. They're there for life.
Yeah, they're there for till the very end, my friend, till the very end,
till they burn out. Yeah,
it's exactly. Great. It's great to listen to it though. To listen to it in that style. I just think that, like, I guess in my head I thought it would be easier.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
because it sounds so organized. When you guys do it, you're like, oh man, this is like.
I don't envy you having done it
on the right shelf.
The first time is not easy, is it? Yeah.
No, and I'm like, what shelf does this go on?
Well, look, buddy, it's your show, Nick. You start. Why don't you start us off with the principal? In this case, obviously Maigret, and I think that's fitting because you're a little better read in him than Josh and I. So while we'll share our opinions, you got a bit more of the experience with good old Maigret.
All right, yeah, I will. I'll start off with the principal. Do you guys? I got a quote for you. Do you guys know the Wu-Tang Clan at all?
I've heard
familiar. Yes, I'm familiar, but I don't think it's been a while.
I know the Rizza. Like, is it Rizza or Rizza?
The Rizza.
I'm just putting myself right now that I don't know much about them. So
anyway. Go back and ask your first question again. Are you familiar?
No, but that's all staying in. I love it.
The answer is no.
Okay, well, there's a line in it, and they're talking about the crew. They're talking about who's in the band, and there's one of the guys is called the Inspector Deck, right? And when he's describing what the Inspector does in the Wu-Tang Clan, he says he's like that dude that'll sit back and watch you play yourself and all that, right? And you sit there and know you lying and take you to court after that because he's the inspector. And I was like, he just described how Maigret comes across in the books.
It totally does. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, he just sits there and he watches. He has his suspects and he sits there and he watches them act a fool. And he's watching them. He knows they're lying, but he doesn't say anything.
He doesn't,
you know. No. And then afterwards, he takes them to court.
Yeah, he totally does. Mishu particularly.
Yeah. So Maigret, yeah. So I have my experience with Maigret was different than this one, than all of the other 6 that I read.
All right.
He's agitated in this. He's like upset. He's emotional, and it was odd because Maigret is not that. That's what I like about him, is that he's not emotional. He's the psychologist sitting there and going, and then tell me about your mother. You know?
Yeah.
It was weird to have him just come in and like see Emma, and he notices that there's something up with her right away. And then he's just like, bring me a beer. And then he's like, come here. And you're just like, who is this guy? And this is the first Maigret that I had ever read. I'd be like, I hate this jerk.
Yeah, it's a bit of Long John Silver there, isn't there? Like coming in.
Yeah, he just he comes in, he's all huge in the door, and they're like, oh no, this is the guy we gotta look out for. There's a line that says, of course, Maigret installed himself at the Admiral Hotel, the best in town. You're just like, Maigret doesn't care about that. He'll like hike through two feet of snow to get to investigation. And he just shrugs and goes, that's the way it is. You know, he'll sit when he's got to sit and watch something, sit and watch a location to see if someone shows up. He never complains. He never is like, I got to have the best and be comfortable. He's just not that. So it was weird.
That's cool. I wonder if he's done that, if Simenon's kind of written it that way, like he needs the best. Is that like him trying to pull the wool over our eyes as readers and distract us from the fact that this is, as I wrote in my plot summary, the epicenter of where so much stuff happens? Does he want to keep that distant from the reader, do you think? Or is he really just giving us a bit of Maigret that he's just never been shown before, his aptitude for luxury or whatever?
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. And the only thing that I can think of is that why is the most famous, the most successful inspector from Paris sent to this small town where not even a murder has occurred?
Yeah.
Right? So, and they're like, oh, well, the mayor called him in. And I'm thinking like, Maigret's doing his job, doing his real job, what he considers important, which that is a big character of him. He takes everything very seriously, and that's usually the only time he gets mad is when something gets in the way. When someone is distracting him, when something is getting in the way of him solving the investigation, it's one of the few times that he gets angry. So I'm like, okay, he's in, I forget what town he's in. Renee,
yeah, it's like the regional capital of that area. Yeah.
So he's there doing his job, and he gets pulled off of that to go to Concarneau. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Concarneau. Yeah.
So he gets pulled, and it's not even a murder. It's someone has been shot. Yeah, and they're like, so he, to me, knowing how Maigret usually acts, is that he's mad. He's mad that he's even there. That he's like, yeah, he's like, this isn't even a case. What do you mean? Like, this guy was, it was a shot, but even like right off the bat, he seems to know that it wasn't supposed to happen. It's almost like in the first 5 minutes, he's like this wasn't this. He doesn't care at all about Monstagon. How do you say that one?
Mostagoen.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't care at all about that guy's story. I mean, he's just like, he barely looks into it, and he's more focused on the three characters at the Admiral and Emma. So that was, I don't know, that was weird.
You see that irritation that you cite, right? Like you see it in his character, and it struck you so different. I made a similar note as well about how he does seem to be quite like irritated and impatient in this one. But do you see that follow through consistently in the book, or was it just sort of like a strange thing at the beginning and that kind of died off for you?
Yeah, he becomes regular Maigret as it goes on. Okay, even though there are other certain aspects, like he isn't. Like all those reporters around him would drive him nuts in any other book. He usually toys with them, like he owns them. They don't. They get in the way, is what it is. And and they're like, and he's surrounded by them. He's like,
he is,
and he just doesn't even like acknowledge them, which is kind of, I guess, in the Maigret characterization that I'm saying, but I don't know. They're in the way. So that's something that would make him angry.
Yeah, typically. I just wonder if, because Servalier is so wrapped up in the journalist and the kind of the print side of things, if he is, and this is just, maybe projection as well, if he's just giving more time and space naturally to those irritations because he might see one of them like, oh, here's a guy who really wants to ramp up the hysteria. What could he be hiding? Is he trying to observe it? But again, if he is doing that, if he is playing those cards, Simenon doesn't characterize it that way. He just shows us angry. He doesn't show us angry and then here's why I'm angry.
Yeah.
Or here's all the journalists that normally irritate me and here's why they're not irritating me this time, because I want to let them kind of see what they're going to do, Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, that's helpful context from you because Josh and I have only got the two Maigrets read. So this was different then from the start. Yeah.
Yeah, because I found he was almost a totally different character, at least from the beginning anyways, compared to like the one we saw in the Headless Corpse. I mean, in the Headless Corpse, we have him studying Madame Calas. He's an observer of the human experience. He's like a flaneur, he's like this turn of the century type, navel gazing type who can see people and what they do and whatnot, and he observes, and like you said in the Wu-Tang quote there, like he sees what you're doing, he sees what you're up to, and he knows you're stewing in your own juices, and he's just going to let that go until he needs to reveal everything. And here he just kind of shows up and he's annoyed. I mean, he's doing this, like, I don't really know what he's doing in Rennes, because obviously he's sent from Paris to this regional capital to organize a force there or something. So he's been put on some bureaucratic
to reorganize its mobile unit. That's
which he probably didn't want to do, but he had to do. And then from there, you think, maybe a reprieve. Oh, this guy got shot and he's still alive. This is an easy case for me to solve. I'll go down here and then that's it. But then he sees there's something else going on. But he comes there already annoyed already. So, I mean, even the most easiest cases annoy him, it seems. But as Nick says, as the story goes, you see the old Maigret. As soon as I found when he first interacts with Emma, you see the old Maigret slowly coming out again. You know, the one that we saw in the headless corpse, more laid, you know, more patient and that sort of sense. And then all of a sudden, you know, like maybe he's putting on a show of his authority. You know, he's going like, get me a beer or do this. And the poor proprietor who had like a murder nearby, who has all these people. I mean, his bottle, like the Pernod and the Calvados, like that was all. They had to take all of the liquor in his store, in his cafe, and they had to basically check it all. And he's upset. He's frantic. And in terms of how Simenon writes Maigret is done with this guy like immediately. Like the guy can't even get a word in, you know. Like, and he's legitimately has a complaint. And it's not like he's like the mayor who's on his ass like nearly 3/4 of the book. Like he says absolutely wants nothing to do with this at all. Is that a Maigret thing too, like where he kind of just doesn't like one person, kind of like how he hates the commissioner or whatever his name is in the Headless Corpse?
Oh, the judge.
The judge.
Yeah, that's what I kind of had for like one of the side characters was the mayor kind of stood in for the judge in the story. But without power. He's just like a fly buzzing around.
Totally is.
Local power, that's the worst part of it, right? And the way that the mayor was written into the story makes him very possible being a suspect. And you kind of get that feeling halfway through when like, oh, well, this guy has connections because he owns the land, because he owned the land that Michaud's that the Michaud bought, right? That they're trying to sell and whatnot. So I mean, there's all these connections here, and anyway,
and it's good though. Simenon does a good job with those because they're red herrings that we think, and then he just nails you with Leon, right? Coming back from America, which we maybe had no chance of guessing. Anyway, sorry, pal, you were on to your Sorry, Nick, we just got in your way there, buddy. You were talking.
Oh, no problem. So what else? He isn't interested in the forensics at all. Like when he's like, when Leroy is like, should I test these for fingerprints? He's like, if you want, like whatever. And I read I read the second one, and he also, where is it? He's also out of town in the second one. The late Monsieur Gallet.
Okay,
and in this one, he brings in a forensic specialist and is constantly like, did you test this? Did you do that?
Oh, wow.
So it was really...
I just wonder, is that Simenon trying to figure out how he wants him to be? Because like Josh was telling us about his forensics background, the writer, like, I just wonder if in these early stages of 1930, 31 or 29 or whatever, if he's trying to figure out what kind of guy he wants him to be. Do I want him to be irascible and irritated and kind of frustrated? Do I want him to be posing the scientific questions? He's got big footprints to fill if he's going to do this. Because I mean, Conan Doyle only died less than a decade before, right, Josh? I mean, it was in the late 20s or early 30s Conan Doyle died. So
like 28 or something like that.
28. So he must be trying to figure out like what he wants his guy to be. Yeah. So maybe that's why you're getting so many different versions in the early stages of Maigret.
Yeah, that's a good point because they are. Yeah, that was 2, and this is either 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And then, as it goes on, those are the ones that I enjoy more because it's the established Maigret. He acts like he's supposed to act, I guess.
Yeah.
And in this one, he's kind of all over the place. You know,
that's really interesting. That's cool because that will affect your scoring probably in a way that it might not have affected my scoring because you're not getting from it what you want as an experienced Simenon reader, whereas I might have liked something. So that's cool.
Yeah, it was very hard to score because I love Maigret, but it's like, is this what I love?
Nice. Well, Josh, I'll go next. Maigret, obviously our principal here. I said exactly what you said, Nick. Like there's no interest in forensics here at all. He's actually accused of being neglectful of evidence, right? By the mayor, who's like, don't you want to look a little bit more closely into stuff to get me a suspect? And later, of course, he apologizes. He says, yes, I know you were doing the slow road and, you were doing your own thing. And, they kind of both share a nice conversation about how one was ignorant of the other. And then at the end, Maigret says, look, Mr. Mayor, this is why I had to do it this way. But it's all about these psychological undercurrents. And so although you're sensing these differences in some of the other stories you're familiar with, and this one, he is still really poised around the psychological aspects of the people he's observing. And he is now, I think, coming very clearly in my mind as a character who is built on observing stuff, right? Like there's a great quote from early in the book, guys. He let the silence grow. People are always in a hurry to fill it. That's when they reveal themselves. You know, I like that because it lives outside the book, obviously.
There's your Wu-Tang guy right there.
Yeah,
That's your man.
Right.
Yeah.
Infected Deck.
I think Deck like the
stop trying, Josh. What are you doing, man?
I know.
The deck is what they call the records.
Gotcha.
The player that they scratch on the deck.
Okay, got you. Okay, yeah, I'm out of my element. I'll just let Scott continue there.
I don't really feel any lack of confidence or like certainty here with Maigret. Like he does seem to know what he wants to do. I think Simenon knows as well that he's going to get to where he's going. Like, so I think maybe there's a bit of experimenting with what kind of macro character he wants to make, but within the world and the walls of this story, I think he knows how he's writing Maigret. He's pretty unapologetic is our inspector here, right? Like he's really dedicated to his method. But it is, I don't know, maybe that is ironic given it's like early days for Maigret, how dedicated he is. But I think we got to be, I don't know. I'm kind of going back and forth in my head as I'm kind of looking over my notes here. But the things that stand out for me the most about this is how he executes his moral compass. Like the Sherlock Holmes stories I found most interesting were the ones where at the end he'd solved the crime and he executes his own moral compass and he decides what he wants to do. What he thinks is right by the clients, that's what he's going to do. To hell with what the law tells me. If I can get away with something and not tell Lestrade or not tell Bradstreet or not let Scotland Yard know what's happening because I think it's good, I'm going to do it. And I feel like we got a bit of that brewing here with Maigret. I like that he's not entirely by the book at the end. I think that he sees in Emma and Le Guerec real victims deserving of a second chance, and his impatience with these idiots, you know, in the inner sanctum of the Admiral Hotel, these kind of entitled middle class people, he rips them, right? He just rips them shreds, and I think that he wants to favor the working class hero here in the story. He's also kind, though, guys. He's kind to Inspector Leroy, and I don't know if there's a consistency there with how he works with subordinates or other officers. But I also like that I get to see his, like, he's not dismissive of Emma or her suspicions. He's not dismissive of Leroy either, and kind of his wet behind the ears, novice kind of actions. I like that, and when we see him bluster and emote, I think he's blustering and emoting at the right times, like to show us what he thinks is important, which is, you know, the regular person working behind the bar or out on the street or whatever. Like I really liked Maigret in this story. I liked him here more than I liked him in The Headless Corpse. And I think that's probably, Nick, because I don't have the same read on him as you do yet. I haven't seen how he becomes a fully formed, or maybe The Headless Corpse is him fully formed, but I liked the kind of spontaneity in him here. So it was a little strange and off-putting maybe for a more experienced reader like you, but just picking up the book as a read, I kind of thought he was interesting. So I liked him. I don't know. Josh, you want to advance on that or give us your 2 cents?
Well, you're talking about his relationship with Leroy. And I was just saying here, this is a page 34 of the Penguin edition that I have. Okay. So this is the moment where he basically grabs Leroy's notes on the case so far. And the inspector's notebook was a cheap little graph paper pad with an oilcloth cover. Leroy's was a loose leaf daybook in a steel binder. And it's this line right here that just, I think, sums up what Scott is talking about in terms of Maigret here. His manner paternal, Maigret read. And then he goes through like all of the notes that Leroy has done that he's going through all the notes, you know, that's been taken so far and taking him through the case. So even though he comes off as impatient and annoyed in this story, he is still like he's a patient mentor with Leroy. He calls him out when he fucks up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
or when he's asking too many questions, like, but what about the mayor? The mayor is going to get upset. And he's like, don't worry about it. This stuff happens. Just deal with it. We'll move on and get the case done, right? He knows how to manage Leroy in this situation. Leroy is doing the groundwork for him that he needs to do. And I think also he doesn't want to create a sense of urgency in Leroy. And I think that's why he's a bit more laissez-faire about, forensics, don't worry about it. That sort of thing. He thinks he has an angle on the case early on, and he wants to follow it through. And he doesn't want to have anyone get in the way of that. And then when circumstances happen, like, for example, when Servier pulls his whole con with the, faking his death and escaping because he knows very well who's after him and all this sort of stuff. And he wants to create, and it sends in the letter, it sends in the article early to the newspaper so that he'll create hysteria in the town enough, that hopefully that would get both, not just the dog, but also not the dog. He was actually going after Le Grec.
Yeah, I think that's it. Leclerc.
Leclerc. Yeah, he's going after Leclerc, right? So he wants someone to take him out by creating this hysteria. So Maigret sees that, and I think he's like, he's impatient, but he's deductive. Even though he doesn't use forensics per se, he still uses that classic detective character sense of deduction. And he's a strategist as well. He withholds information when he needs to, as he lets Michaud stew in his own juices. He lets him tell everything that he needs to know about the case, and he's observant. He's doing his psychological analysis of everybody, and he's maintaining himself as an authority figure as well. That's indifferent. That is also rebellious, because that's also triggering different emotions from the mayor and from other people, and seeing how they would act, because to him, they could still be a suspect in this case. Yeah. So he has to kind of create these things. I know Simenon doesn't quite sell it on the page, but I do see a kind of a strategy. Not that he doesn't sell it, he doesn't spell it out for you on the page. So between the lines, you can see maybe that Maigret is trying to manipulate events or reacting to events in a strategic way, so that they can get him to where he's been going from the very beginning, since he first had an inkling about what is actually going on here, right? And that, of course, begins when he sees Emma try to poison those three at the table. And I think that's when everything starts clicking together for him, and then he just follows that path.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Well, shall we give our scores for the principal then?
Yeah.
All right.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I gave it a 4 because I really liked them. I didn't think it was perfect. I know there's more dimension to come in the next few decades, but I liked them in this story. In at least this story, I liked them. I thought it was good. So I went for a 4. I thought it's a good score.
I was a 4 out of 5 as well. I think I was kind of maybe similar to him on the last one. I can't quite remember, but I enjoyed his character no matter what. I liked the psychological analysis. It kind of reminded me of Will in Hannibal, like that kind of like, step into the, have empathy for the perpetrator and figuring out what they're thinking to get things, observing. But he's just a lot more psychologically leaning into that. And I liked his use of strategy. I like just how, there was a paternal sense to him. There was that moral compass, like Scott said. Scott pointed out the Sherlock Holmes example of him having that moral compass of letting people off. And I think you're thinking of like stories like, like the Abbey Grange, for example, right? Where a woman whose husband was murdered, and she's one of the prime suspects. It's because, that the husband died because he was beating up on her, and her lover is one who defended him, and he lets them get off. Like he lets them, get away with it, so to speak. So I think all the stuff that I saw in Maigret in the Headless Corpse were in here, but I thought on my interpretation, we're getting a more younger, maybe more impatient person. And then the one we got in the Headless Corpse was more of like, just a guy wary of like the whole life in general. Like he's still an observer of human, of people, but he's not as impatient anymore. He seems more like stuck in a routine in the Headless Corpse, and he still hates authority, but he's very kind of like laissez-faire about it. He's just acceptance of this is reality and this is what we have to deal with. I found this Maigret had a bit of a youthful streak in him, a little bit of rebellious sort of like, and there's a bit of arrogance to him, but it wasn't like there wasn't any malice to that arrogance, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I gave him a 3.
Okay.
All right.
I was just a little
more critical, but I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I was just a little off put. He definitely is patient with Leroy, and he will, like, he'll show emotion if it makes sense to make someone do so. He wants to see their reaction. If he's like, oh, I got to be really nice to this person, that's how you get what I want out of them, or you'd be really, really angry. But just him just kind of yelling at Emma at the beginning, I was just like, he's usually that's usually who he's the softest with, is the person that he sees that is obviously going through something.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because he is definitely softer with Madame Callas in the Headless Corpse. That's a good point. Yeah, and she, I mean, ostensibly has already lived a life, in a way that Emma hasn't. And then, but then he changes a bit, doesn't he? When he finds out what Emma's backstory is and the little Emma and how she lost all that, then he maybe does soften up a bit. But
yeah.
Okay, well, how about the investigation, Nick? I mean, this is your 6th, 7th, you said. So you lead us off here on this category about the story itself, the narrative.
Okay, so for the investigation, I was, when he comes into the Admiral, and I was kind of, it comes off as he knows these are his guys right away, almost. Like I said before, he doesn't care about who was shot. Like, I don't know. I've never been a detective, but it would seem to me that you would first go, maybe, why was this guy shot? But he doesn't seem to really care about it. He's just he walks in and he's like, here's the boisterous, the newspaper man, Servier, yes. So he's like right in his face right away, just like, oh, hey, what's crazy? What's going on? And he just sits down with these guys. And I mean, obviously they were there. They were the ones that are involved. They were sitting there before he left the bar. So these are the people to talk to, but he's just like, oh, here's the answers right here. It almost just automatic to him. He's like, there's Emma right there. She's like shaken over by the till. And,
clearly, visibly afraid of things. Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that, because he does step into that scene, but early on there's a line, and I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's about Le Pommeret, and Maigret is listening to him talk, and he's saying something like, this guy clearly likes the sound of his own voice. He's telling the story this way because he wants to talk. He likes being heard,
Vice Consul of Denmark.
I don't know how he investigates after that. It came off to me that I just knew who it was right at the beginning.
Oh, did you?
I was just, he was just, Michaud is just acting in this. Yeah, he's terrified, but the way that Maigret reacts to him being terrified, it tells you almost. He's not like, oh, this guy he's worried. Maybe he's guilty of something. He thinks he's next. It was just like, this is the guy right here.
And did you feel that way because there's like a lack of compassion or empathy that you see from the inspector, or he's not trying to comfort him or calm him down? He's just kind of letting him go. Because I assume you're citing particularly that scene in the prison barracks, right? Because to me, that was when I started thinking this is Michaud. Or maybe you knew right away. Maybe you knew at the table. I mean, I didn't, certainly. But do you think that there's less compassion there, which helped you see how Maigret was viewing him as a suspect?
Yes. There was, exactly, because he was letting him do his thing. He was letting him just break down, be crazy, and he was always just like, "Oh, you're staying here? Oh, you're in your pajamas?" Like, he wasn't like placating him at all. Yeah. He's like, there's obviously something going on with this guy. And even when Leroy shows up, everything he just dismisses, like, right away. He's not worried about Leroy at all. Like, this big giant guy that is terrorized the town.
The Frankenstein's monster. No, he's just totally not. He's not.
He just immediately dismisses it. He immediately dismisses the first shooting. I don't know. He's just so focused on these guys right at the beginning that I kind of would have liked it if it threw more shade around. I just thought it was way too focused.
And from the beginning.
Yeah. Right from the beginning. Like I was like, these are the guys. These are the suspects. There's nothing that unravels as the story goes.
Interesting. So
they're just kind of handed it.
So with the second book, the second Maigret book, did you find that it also had a really quick start that was easy for you to follow and predict, or did you think that one stretched out a bit more and cast more shade on suspects before the moment of, oh yeah, I know who this is?
It did. It was like
Interesting.
This. They're like this. He follows one lead and it leads to this, and it opens up different avenues, different roads, and he goes and checks this one and checks that one, and this leads to that. Whereas this was sort of like it was just right there in that box all along.
Yeah, he just happened to go to the right place, and that was everybody.
And that was it. And then it was just like he put the microscope on it. It wasn't so much an investigation. It was just this microscopic view of these people in this. The 4 people left in the Admiral.
I never thought of that. I never thought of that. But what you're saying about cast and shade actually is, I mean, it tracks, because there was maybe a missed opportunity with the mayor's character and how linked up he could have been, or could have been made to be, with all the land that Michaud was, governing as this real estate developer. And maybe that could have been stretched out a bit more to lengthen the time it took readers like yourself to just jump at it right away.
Yeah, and when it did get to the mayor, it did cross my mind, like, oh, maybe this is gonna lead to a bigger picture. But by the end of it, you're still right back in that first box.
Interesting. That's a good read. I read it a bit different, but that's making me think. It's making me wonder. So that was obviously like a strike against the story for you, the narrative. Like, it really kind of pissed you off a wee bit, how easy you were to just see, oh, well, you're not giving me any surprises here. The backstory would have been surprises and like red herrings or whatever. But if you felt that you could pick it from the beginning, from this sort of cast of, well, like a vending machine's only got 12 options. Here you got 4 guys, pick one of them, right? Like,
and the first 2 disappear almost immediately.
Yeah. Yes, I could totally coming around to your point of view now. Josh, tell me, man, like, what did you think of this one?
Well, I mean, I would say this was a very anti-procedural way of going about the investigation, about the overall story that we get, because we're not really following like, oh, a clue, and this leads to that, and this reveals that, and this reveals that. Like, actually, it was kind of funny, actually, because if you think about the headless corpse, for example, the one that we covered earlier on our show by Simenon, the only reason Maigret is able to stumble into anything about the man, about the headless corpse, so to speak, is that he's looking for a telephone to call the judge. And there's no judges. And the bar on there doesn't have like a phone booth.
It's very serendipitous. Yeah,
but he wants a phone booth, a private phone booth. So he just walks across to the other key, and then he finds the Callis bistro, and then he sees Madame Callis, and that's how everything seems to like connect, right? So again, we are dealing with like serendipitous things that do unfold, because as soon as he gets there, he goes into the bar, as Nick said. And then, you see the 3. Now, my opinion was like, I think he started, something was off when he saw Emma, because she's like shaking and these guys are obviously bother her. And then we see then we have the attempt of the attempted poisoning. And that to me is when all of the alarm bells go off for Maigret, where he starts putting his piece together. But it's just that he just happened to be at that moment at the table wherein the poisoning occurs. I mean, he would have heard about it, obviously, if he was already in town. Like, oh, like he could have maybe like gone up to his room or something, and the guy still had a drink, and then and then you hear about the poisoning situation immediately after that. So it didn't really make a difference if he was sitting at that table or not. So I don't know, like, how do you start a mystery novel? How do you start a mystery story? Like, do you just get the detective arriving at the scene of the crime, like it's Castle or something like that, and then just go through the notes? Or do you somehow involve the main character in there so that he's kind of moving through the world, and then he's reacting to the events around him? And I guess it depends, what you like, I guess, in terms of the mystery novel. Because we did File of Vance about the fair play, right? The idea of like, you don't want to hide information. You don't want to pull things out, that doesn't make sense. You want to give the reader every opportunity to solve the crime, right? And that's kind of the ideal. And I can see here in this story, again, we have a situation where, let's just say from the side, the investigation goes the way that it does. And then it gets up to the point wherein we get the big, like, locked room mystery reveal where the detective character has all the people gather in one room, which it does at the jail, at the barracks. And then he basically goes over all the details of the case. And then he's like, oh, the butler did it, right? Like, you get that scene, right? You get that classic scene. It still resulted for everything to make sense in a very expository moment about where we hear all about Le Glorec and the whole thing about, bringing the drugs across the Atlantic and then ending up in prison and whatnot, and then having to come back and get revenge. So we get the whole backstory only at the very end where it fits everything all together. And like, as I said, that's very kind of like anti-procedural because we don't really have the clues of those relationships going through. Like we know Pomeray is a womanizer and a bit of a dick, but why is he a suspect? Why is he involved in this conspiracy? Like the fact that these three men are still hanging out together after getting in a criminal enterprise, I guess that makes sense. But at the same time, I feel that like spontaneity that Nick is talking about how like everything just happens and it doesn't quite, follow the clue, like follow the clues.
You're right. You are right. And it's true. Like, why are these guys still together? And the only thing I can come back to, which is what I give the text credit for, is how it's criticizing that kind of bourgeois middle class. Like, I think Simenon is absolutely hammering away at these guys who feel as big and like, yeah, what you're saying is true, right? We are in a criminal enterprise together and we screwed this guy over, and they have knowledge of Emma's backstory in a sense, right?
And they're using Emma too.
Like, absolutely. So they feel untouchable. And why don't they, if they want to hang out, move 50 miles east, right? Or move closer to Paris? Or why do they have to stay there? Because they like being bigwigs. They like being who they are in this particular place. It gives them flex. It gives them power. And I think the whole bourgeois criticism is part of this story. Like, if I was ever going to like want to teach this book, right, I would want to play on that theme because I think it's really alive there. And I'm not as well read, Nick, as yourself, so you can tell us whether that is something that is in other books. Right?
Absolutely.
So absolutely. I think playing with something there thematic as well that might excuse some of the, why are you giving me all of these suspects in the first page on stage, act 1, scene 1 in the box? Like, here they are at the cafe to pick from. Well, I think they're there because they don't feel like they have to move because they're just up arses and they feel like they're invincible. And that's part of the book's strength, I think, is having that sort of structurally it's not, but thematically it is. I think it's a strength.
I see where you're coming from, Scott. That's a good point, because I was trying to figure out, like what Simenon is doing there and making that sort of somewhat political statement and classist statement. It does make sense on how he's trying to approach the story. I still found the idea, though, that the main character is kind of put in a sense of danger. Like he could have like accidentally consumed that poison, and that's even discussed about when Emma reveals that at the very end of the story. So I mean, already like there's a poisoning happening immediately after this guy gets shot. He's alive, but someone gets poisoned. Following that, a dog gets shot. Following that, Seviers gets kidnapped. So there's all this, like, all these events are happening all at once. And to me, that kind of made the story interesting. It's not your typical procedural. It seems more like it's almost like a hyper real situation because you have this yellow dog. So automatically you're thinking of like, is this some sort of like omen? And even Michoud, he kind of plays on that because he makes this whole story up about, I saw a fortune teller and she said I'll be haunted by a yellow dog, right?
Yeah.
So then your mind is put into classic spectral hound kind of stories from folklore. And I mean, we are in Brittany, which is, the Bretons are very like, there's that Celtic deep background into them in the culture. We have, that tradition play out with Emma because she's wearing like the headdress. I went and looked it up because it kept talking about her headdress a lot,
It
right?
did. You're right.
The
Yeah, it did.
Breton headdress, right? And
Yeah.
that's her,
Yeah.
a local in her own community, and she's being terrorized by like these guys who think they're bigwigs. It's a very colonial versus,
Yeah. Well, it's very xenophobic. The book is so xenophobic. That's what the Yellow Dog's all about, isn't it? Like the outsider and the fear of the outsider and all of that. Yeah,
but even though this is a region of France, Brittany, I felt there was a colonial aspect to the people in the town versus like the authorities there, like the mayor who lords over them, like in his chateau by the beach. And then you have, guys like Pomeray and the other two, and how they take advantage of the people and whatnot. And then you have the locals, with their own culture, like Emma, for example, and how they're being used, both her and her husband, her future husband, in regard to, the situation. So I think there was some really cool notes he's pulling there. I like how the tension builds with Sivier's disappearance and the continued presence of the yellow dog. It goes into the supernatural too. Like we're talking about the fortune teller story that he makes up. It's very similar. I guess it reminded me a little bit of Hound of the Baskervilles, how that plays out psychologically. It then unfolds in an instant, exciting manner until, you get that big reveal, the exposition. So it kind of all makes sense. I also liked how the denouement was sentimental as well. Like I like the fact that these two get another chance at life, that Maigret shows his own moral compass, that the law doesn't always work in circumstances, especially when it's a classist system that we're living in. And I did get what you got, as I said, Scott. I got those allusions to like classic home stories, like The Sign of Four, The Crooked Back, Abbey Grange. I can feel like there's similar, like especially with the large man with the hidden past who's terrorizing people. Yeah. That's The Sign of Four, right?
That's in The Sign of Four. And that's the thing about the book that I think ultimately I really liked, is how far reaching the story was. It's got roots in America. And of course we know how much we love the European readers, and they love America, right? And it's just we're only talking, these are the interwar years, right? Like the fascination with America and American history is already there, but it's growing, and it's grown since Doyle wrote about it with such fever, right? And here in this book you've got like the story. Do you remember the one? Sorry, Nick, I know you haven't read this necessarily, but you might want to check it out. It's called the Boscombe Valley Mystery. Josh, you remember about what's his name? Like some Blackjack from Ballarat. Was that his name? Like the guy who goes to Boscombe Valley with the other guy who knows he did bad stuff in Australia, and then he tries to force the marriage, and then he kills him when he says, "No, I'm not letting my son, or your daughter," or whatever. There's more to it than that, so it's kind of a spoiler, but there's more to it than that. Anyway, but I feel like this story has that sort of reach. Like it wants to use exotic or sort of foreign things to help build the theme of xenophobia, certainly, but also to give the character the mysterious Frankenstein big stepper, that wants to give him an interesting back as well. And I just wonder how kind of the specter of Conan Doyle does hover over this. I know we've talked about Conan Doyle several times already here, but I feel like even with the Noble Bachelor, the one where Hattie Doran has the American husband that comes back, and she didn't know, so she stood up at the altar, this other guy she was with, to get back with her American guy. I feel like there's a lot of specter of Sherlock here, and those types of stories that try to use the Empire or America, particularly in this case, to give a backstory that the reader will find of interest. But that's a bit of a bait and switch, because Simenon doesn't give us any of these information, so it's not fair play in the sense that some of the Holmes stories were, and the Benson case certainly wasn't fair play. I don't care what Philo Vance says in the story. That there are elements to this story that really let it down, because there's no way you might have been able to guess, like Nick did. Okay, I know it's you, because the process of elimination shoots these other guys down, but there's no way you're going to be able to put the story of the little Emma together until we get that info drop, right? That exposition dump at the end. Yeah. So that's a bit disappointing, and I dinged the story for that, because I would like to have had more of a fair play mystery because I'm not reading fantasy, I'm not reading science fiction, and I'm not even reading like convenient pulp. I'm reading a book that should give me, as a mystery, ways of putting together the information. I don't mind a reveal that's kind of surprising, but there's so much in this that you're never going to have predicted. And I feel like that really works against the story in giving it super top marks, because it's kind of like, oh, by the way, all this stuff you never would have going to be able to figure out for yourself, you know?
I agree. Well, I enjoyed the story as a whole. Like, I just loved all the different characters. I liked just like the mood of the story, and everything. Like, I just found like I really enjoyed Simenon's writing in this story, but it was very different from the Maigret that I experienced. And maybe it's because it's so different from Maigret, and you mentioned, the connections to like the Holmes books that we've read, the Holmes stories that we've read. We're getting that feel to it. Maybe that's why we're kind of hooking up to it more than Nick.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Overall, I gave it 4 out of 5. The story.
I did too. I liked it, and I think just to pick it up as a non-Maigret reader, which of course I still think we have to class ourselves as, because we just don't have Nick's experience with the character. I feel like it's an interesting story. It's got its weak points, certainly, and its structurally weak points, as Nick did a good job of pointing out right from the beginning. Yeah. But there are still red herrings in here that can kind of turn your head a bit. So yeah, I think a 4 is where I am too. I'm a 4 as well.
Yeah. I gave it a 3. I thought that everything that, you say that, like, all those interesting aspects, they all came out too late for me.
Fair enough.
I just wish that we would have got a little bit more teaser. Yeah. I mean, from the point that he gets to the hotel to when he does here's what happened.
Yeah.
Like, there's a big space where
there is. Yeah.
Like,
they just look at apartment rooms and stuff. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So our next category is the perpetrators. These are the antagonists, the villains of the story. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Nick? How did these guys match up against other Maigret antagonists?
So Maigret is like, usually the crime is someone of circumstance, someone like a normal person that is put in the situation where they're kind of trapped and they panic and they do something that's maybe not in line what they normally would have done. These aren't like career criminals. There's one I read that was a serial killer.
All right, so he does tinker with that as well.
So that was kind of different, but usually it's opportunists who are maybe like leaning towards criminality, but not that far, and then they get stuck in this position to where they commit murder or try to, as they do in this book. Yeah. So I have the perpetrator. And it is all 3 of them. But I mostly considered the perpetrator the Michaud, Dr. Michaud.
Yeah, so did I.
Because even Leroy is like, he doesn't really care too much about the other guys. He put it all on Michaud. He was like, he was the one. He was the guy who sold me out. Like, he was the bad guy.
He does. That's right. He does say that. Yeah,
for sure.
So. Yeah, and so as far as Michaud as a diabolical criminal mastermind, like, not really. Is he a worthy adversary of the Maigret investigative skills? I don't know. Not really. He's a chump. He's a spoiled baby. He's had everything in his life. He uses people. He was born. He's born with money. I mean, he went to college to become a doctor and then didn't do it. It's not like he got his money from starting a business and had a plan.
That's right.
There was no building blocks to anything. He's very random. It's just like, whatever the immediate solution is, like, oh no, there's Leroy, kill him. Like, oh no, that didn't work. What do we do? Like, I gotta kill my partner. He's gonna talk. Like, everything is rash, unplanned. Like, he's just he's chaos. He's chaos as a criminal. He's not good. He's not a good criminal. And I think that he gets lucky a lot. And And then and then it's his breakdown in the hotel where he's losing it, and Maigret's just sitting right next to him, just watching this guy be like, "You're not gonna get dressed today."
And then he has a second breakdown when he is arrested.
Like, you're not going home. You know, and the mayor is like, "You need to arrest someone right now." And you're right. That was like, does the mayor have something to do with this? Because he is so focused on Leroy getting arrested. Who's this stranger? It's obviously not my friends. They didn't do it. It's this stranger in town.
Of course.
So the mayor was the one thing that I was like, oh, maybe this has something to do with the mayor. As far as, I just don't know. The planning, it was, I loved the backstory. I wish the backstory would have been
teased out more.
More. I mean, that was so great when it got to what it was and why this guy was coming back to get him, and then you start rooting for him. You're like, I hope Leroy does get this guy. Like,
totally, because I'm trying to conceptualize it right in my mind. Like, you don't have technology like we got today to help you cross the ocean. So there's talk about him in his confessional at the end, right? About how he had to like acquire all of these chart maps, and he was trying to use the stars, and he had this old skipper who was trying to teach him how to get across the ocean. This guy is going to it blind, and he's taking this chance to make the money, and a bit of justification in there because everybody else seems to be doing the same thing. And like, the hardship he would have endured just getting across the ocean, forget whether or not like the 6 years he has to spend in prison, that is it's a gargantuan task, and then set up. So his betrayal bone must have been like, just absolutely going for Misha, like super time.
Yeah. And then imagine when he gets back and there is his enemy, the guy who just screwed him over, took away like his life that he was planning, his wife. He hasn't seen anything. He said that the American prisons, they treat you like animals. They're to come back and see this asshole like treating having relations with your fiance. Not only that, but treating her like a prostitute. Like, this guy you hate him. You hate Dr. Beach. Everything about him, his cowardliness. I was like, is the yellow dog the physical yellow dog, or is he the yellow dog?
Is he the yellow dog?
Good point. Yeah, because the kidney failure would kind of like, or some kind of organ failure would.
That's
I was thinking of jaundice, but that's like the liver though, so that doesn't quite.
Yeah, but it's
yellow.
You get the idea.
Yeah, he's scared. He's yellow. Like the old.
He is a yellow dog.
He's
like lashing out like an animal cornered, and what he's doing and whatnot.
Interesting title. There's a lot you could do with that, guys. That's a cool title. I hadn't thought of it before.
I think that the foundation for a really good villain is here. Like, I like the psychological makeup of Michoud. I like that he's a coward. I find that interesting. I like that he's not, the match for Maigret per se. He just needs to screw up and finally get caught. But he's still the person that he is. So like, it's very, he's sickly and he's slowly dying of kidney failure over the years and whatnot. They're trying to, Simenon is suggesting, there's a sympathetic aspect to him, but then he's using Emma sexually. And then we hear all the stuff that he did to Leclerc. And then it's just like, like complete write off in terms of that. But what I thought Simenon really could have played on is the dynamic between him and his mother. That it's suggested, it's between the lines in the writing, but I found like I wanted a little bit more of the mother in the end. Like I just can't picture her randomly, like just how Simenon shows it, just randomly going up and shooting a guy in the kneecap or the calf or whatever it was, right? Like, I mean, it makes sense. Believe me, it does. But it just seems like an extreme action to follow. And I don't know. Like, is she capable of doing that? Is she as ruthless as he is? And he is basically the spawn of that ruthlessness, like, evil, the next generation of evil from the Michoud. I don't know. We don't know much about the father. I just think there's a lot to be explored in Michoud as a character and a villain that I just don't think, the length of the story and the type of story that Simenon is telling is able to get to, I suppose, just in terms of how he wrote it anyways. So yeah, that's my take on it anyways.
Yeah, I don't have much to add there, guys. I mean, I like to think of the Perpetrators as a trio, but the truth is, two of them disappear so quickly, like Nick was saying, that we're left with Michaud. And I like his vulnerabilities. I think we have to judge him by, and I suppose this is where the marks fall, right? It's like, if you really buy into the thematics of the book and like that upper or the middle upper class entitlement and snobbery, then you can see why and how he works, right? Mm-hmm. But if you don't buy into the thematics as much, this guy is just a bit of a dick, and he's protected by mom or whatever. Like, he's got big issues, doesn't he? Like, he could definitely be teased out more. Overall, I liked the antagonism in the book, and I thought it was interesting, but to have so much of it shoveled in backstory and revealed towards the end, it is disappointing because we don't get to play him. We get to see his neuroses, but we don't get to play him as a criminal in our little computers the same way that we might with other characters that are kind of given to us in piecemeal or portioned out throughout the narrative. So again, I think this category suffers for me anyway a little bit because of how much I'm meant to be impressed by his ruthlessness at the end in a big brick that's just dropped on the page. So I went for a 3 overall for Perpetrators here because I know there's a good blueprint here, but I couldn't really jump at it.
Yeah, I was a 3 as well.
Oh wow!
I was 2.5.
2.5. You're not far behind us, so just passable for you, Nick.
Yeah. He was. I mean, as far as like how well he wrote that character, like how I think that guy would act, I think it's spot on. Like a spoiled brat. I think he nails it, and I probably feel the same way that Simenon feels about those type of people. So that I liked. Yeah, he's like, hey, look at this asshole. I'm gonna put him in there. I'm gonna put him in my story, and he's gonna be an asshole.
All right. Well, environment then. Let's talk about the locations and the environmental writing or whatever you want there under that broad term. Atmosphere. Yeah. Nick, go for it, buddy.
Okay, so we're in Concarneau. And it comes off like a small village, and I went ahead and looked it up. And in 1931, the census was 10,000 people. So I was like, okay, that that's real. And
it's a somewhat busy port, right? So
the Admiral Hotel is a real place. It actually exists. I thought that was interesting.
That is neat. Yeah.
I liked, and this goes back to what you say about his limited vocabulary. Is I liked how he describes it's very matter of fact, all the environmental descriptions. And I think that it would seem that it would make it harder to envision it, but I think it has a kind of poeticness to its simplicity. You're not bogged down with a lot of metaphors. And after I wrote that note, I was like, are there any metaphors in this book at all?
There's not a lot of that. You're right. There's not a lot of figurative language in the book. It's really declarative, and what you see is what you get. Yeah.
And it just, I don't know why, but it helps me picture it better. The tide is in, and a southwesterly gale is slamming the boats together in the harbor. The wind surges through the streets. Here and there, a scrap of paper scuttles swiftly along the ground. It's almost poetic in its simple simplicity.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments is when Leroy meets him on top of the roof, and they're looking over and seeing, Le Glorec, and then seeing Emma meet. Like, that whole sequence in terms of like where they are in terms of location, I visualize it in my mind perfectly.
Yeah, me too.
And just the emotion and the writing of that sequence was fantastic as well. I love that line. It's like a silent film. And it's funny because I've been watching silent films lately, and I can see that. I can see like the melodious piano background, as they're having their argument and fighting, like you can tell the story they're saying just with their actions and what they're doing and the emotion of the writing in the moment. And like there's just some really great moments like this in this book. And it's interesting because when we read Headless Corpse, I wanted to get that feeling. One thing I love about reading, I love feeling the emotion of a scene or the atmosphere of a scene, like how it relates to what's going on and whatnot. And the procedural aspect that I found in The Headless Corpse, I didn't get a lot of that poetic kind of writing. Like I liked how he described, that district of, the Quai de Valmy, the Saint Martin Canal, like that whole area. He described it well, and you can kind of visualize it, but I didn't quite feel it, I suppose. And in this story, like I just felt like Simenon was pushing himself as an author, and he was doing that Hemingway thing. And this is what you're talking about, Nick, about like the poetic, the poeticness of the simplicity, how poetic the simplicity was of the writing. And I think that he does this really well in this particular book here. So
yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that atmospheric writing is really, really minimal, and that's his style, right? It's very minimalist here, and that forces you to look at how he observes stuff, right? Because you're not reading metaphors, figurative language. You're not bogged down in this stuff. So it forces the reader to kind of check out the subtleties of things like Emma shaken behind the bar or whatever. Like you're looking through Maigret's eyes a bit differently, because Simenon's not asking you to work your way through pathetic fallacy or metaphor or all that sort of stuff. Like you are just taking it as it goes. And I don't know, Nick, if you felt the same way, or Josh, but I felt like there was a lot of kind of small G Gothic stuff in here, like with the darkness, with the fog, with the end of year stuff, the stones, the earthen roads, right? There's no pavement that's come to this place yet. So it feels a little bit more like James Whale Frankenstein type environment, even though we're, much beyond that. Yeah. I don't know, like, I thought the environment was good, but I'll let you finish your thoughts, Nick. Sorry, buddy.
Oh, I mean, it was just a romantic setting, and I just thought he nailed it. And every Maigret is the weather's always mentioned. It's always a character, whether it's snowing, a snowstorm, or it's always raining, or it's super hot. It's always mentioned, and he's always dealing with it. And the scene that you were talking about, the dramatic scene where he's watching the silent movie. Did you guys happen to listen to that BBC episode I sent you?
No, I didn't get to that part. I think I'm like 26, no, 16 minutes in.
Well, spoiler alert.
Okay.
They blow it. They're like, they can hear what they're having the argument. It's such a bummer.
No. That is a bummer. That is a bummer. I can kind of see why they might need to do that for radio, but at the same time, you could have muffles. You could have like street sounds, or
It's just been. It's funny that I just finished Sunset Boulevard, and Norma Desmond, right, the silent movie queen. She would have hated that so much.
She would have.
Yeah.
Well, guys, before we leave this category, what did you make of the Admiral Cafe itself? Like, I know, Nick, you said it's a real place. Was at least, or perhaps still is, but like, do you see that particular location working beyond just being like a center for communications and eating your meals, and this is where two of the people sleep or whatever? Like, do you see anything else going on there, or is it just a functional place in the book?
As someone, I used to drink a lot, and I would spend many hours at the bar, like all night, and I got a job there, and you could, once you were a regular, when it was time to close up, you still got to hang out and drink. And it does become this like community, sort of like I could imagine the Admiral Bar. And I don't know, I thought it was, that he nailed it. Didn't you say that he was like this too? This is the life that he led. Like he was into drugs and drinking and hanging out and being a delinquent, a pseudo criminal. Yeah. And I think that was perfect. Yeah, I love the Admiral.
Yeah, I love its pretensions of like being like this high class spot in this town, like the best place to go. Like Maigret went to the Admiral Hotel for his room, right? He obviously couldn't stay there because that's the best place to stay in Kirkconnell. And you go in there and you have like these marble tables that he describes, but then you have like sawdust on the floor, right?
Yeah, that was confusing.
Yeah, all the different locales, and then how outside, like it's that quaint kind of. He keeps going at describing it like it looks like an aquarium. You're looking into it because of the green tint to the windows and whatnot, right? And just like the whole town revolves around that place, it seems. And I think that Simenon captures that perfectly for the story, and it serves the story very well, in my opinion.
So what did you guys score it?
Sorry, you go first, Nick.
I did 3.5.
Okay, 3.5. I was really generous, like, because I was thinking, like, well, is there anything here I'm missing? And most of the faults of the story come from this character point or that character point, or the backfilling the story later on. I couldn't fault the environment. I think your word romantic is spot on. There is romance here. There's gothic here. There's something really interesting. Late November, you can picture the darkness, the sounds of the boats clacking in the harbor. I like everything about the environment in this book. It's been a while since I've done it, and I can't think of a better place to go. Top marks for environment. So I really liked it. I went for a 5. So why not?
Nice.
I'll stick to it. Yeah, I like this book environmentally. I think there's a lot going on with there, and I think the thematics are wrapped up in the locales too. So I'm going 5.
Yeah, I gave it 5 as well. Like, I loved every visual in this story. Like, I adored, like, just how the mood that's created by it and all the scenes and the writing. Like, this is like, this makes me excited to read more Maigret now compared to the other book, because I just felt this was the way
you got what you wanted here.
I got what I wanted from it. And I know that cool. He's capable of it in terms of his writing and whatnot, right? Now, I'm sure, and I did love Maigret as a character in The Headless Corpse, but I think the writing in this book is superior to that in The Headless Corpse. That's just my opinion. And if I get this kind of writing with Maigret, and at the same time, that character that I grew to love from The Headless Corpse, then I'd be quite satisfied, I think, if this is the trend that we're going to get when we continue on with Maigret.
All right,
yeah,
cool.
it's a very atmospheric series. It's
nice.
It lays heavy in the atmosphere and the mood. 100%. I feel a little bad that I gave it 3.5 now. Now that I hear your guys' opinion,
you can change.
Yeah,
when the story is done, you can tweak it if you want.
All right, we'll bump it up. We'll bump it up to a 4.
Bump it up to a 4. Job done. Right. Secondary or supporting cast. Nick, take it away.
Supporting cast. So you got the other two. The other two suspects. The other two part of the conspiracy. They come and go pretty fast. Yeah. So I did like the Cerveris, Jean Goyard.
Yeah.
I liked him at first. I love that he came. He's like, oh, I'm got this. Like he sees Maigret coming in. He's like, no, I'm gonna get this head on.
Yeah,
we're coming right at this.
He is what he is. Yeah. He's a reporter, even though he might be a bit of a con. He's a reporter too, right? So
and I loved that when he faked the attack on himself. And like ran off. I was like, this guy is awesome. I wish there was more of him in it.
Yeah, I kind of wanted him to be the perpetrator a little bit more. I thought that would be a little interesting. But I did like the psychological build-up, the foundations of Mishu. But I agree with you. Yeah,
I think if he was the perpetrator, it would have been a much craftier murder.
I mean, he already is crafty, right? I mean, he basically faked his death. Like, right. You have a guy getting shot, surviving, and then you have a guy disappearing, faking his death, and then you have this giant guy from like a Sherlock Holmes story running around the town, being chased at like it's like the Salem witch trials, and then you have like, there's just so many interesting dynamics of characters in this story, and like Emma too. Like Emma fascinates me. I compared to Madame Callis, I actually found Emma more interesting than Madame Callis, because I know like Madame Callis had to be interesting to me. Even though Maigret was said, even though like Simenon was writing Madame Callis in The Headless Corpse as we're supposed to find her fascinating, I didn't really feel that in the writing, because I found that all of her story is backed up in that big exposition dump at the end of it when he's talking to like the lawyer or whatever from the town that she's from. Whereas here, I found Emma fascinating right away. I liked how Maigret latches onto her, just like her attitude. She's connected to the whole story and all the characters. Like, I just found that she worked really well in selling this world and the people that live there. Like every character acted like someone you would run into in a small town. You have, the hotel owner who, Maigret treats like shit, but, he has a relevant, feeling. You have the old lady who's upset about the dog being shot, where all the other people are like, these kids are throwing stuff at it while it's down on the ground, right? Like, you get a whole spectrum of humanity here in that sense.
Man, we lost over that dog being shot, huh? That was terrible.
I know.
That was so hard. I was like, I wanted him to come in there and just start smacking little kids around. They're throwing the rocks at it and like.
But I do like the way that Maigret goes in there and he has his presence, his authority, where he just breaks the circle and he instructs a wheelbarrow to be taken, and he just kind of has that almost like funeral-esque march back to the Admiral. So I do think we may have glossed over it in today's chat, but Simenon doesn't gloss over it, and I think that's important.
The way he handles the dog, and he's like caring and loving, and it's almost like he doesn't even have to yell at the crowd. He's like, you all should feel guilty.
That's
like,
right.
You all suck.
Yeah. Like, here, look at this poor creature you just hurt. And they do. They immediately are like, we got wrapped up in it. And that's part of the story too. Is that that's what that's why the Cervais wrote that article and sent it into the paper.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, that guy had a plan.
Chaos. He is a true master of chaos. He's like, he's a Littlefinger. He's manipulating all these events so that he can figure it out. And so how could he not been the villain,
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I really liked him. I liked, as you guys said, I liked the innocence of Inspector Leroy. And he's almost kind of like comic relief too, where he's like,
kind of. There's lightness with him.
Yeah. And the first man shot, Montaguin. He's kind of a little bit comic relief too, where he's like,
yelling, stumbling around,
and his wife thinks he's cheating on him, and he's not. The poor guy, like he's so loyal to his wife, and even the villains back him up on that, saying, that he's a good guy. His wife thinks he's cheating on him. Poor guy, he gets shot in the gut.
He can't get any luck.
No, he can't.
You got the mayor, who was just the stand-in for the judge, and he was annoying, but Maigret handles him properly.
Yeah, he has a good
and like you said, Emma is the most. She's the most interesting. She's definitely the most three-dimensional character, and she had the backstory with Leon, and I wish there was more Leon in it, and you just feel so bad for that guy, and even his dog goes down. Like
I know,
like
everything goes wrong for him except for the 400, francs that he takes up, and at the end,
and he gets Emma back.
And he gets Emma back.
And I do like how, we get that scene between him and Emma. I think that's the best moments that Simenon shows that relationship. He's able to do so in those moments when Maigret and Leroy are watching them from above. Like, I do feel that was one of his best scenes between the two characters. But I do like, as soon as the interrogation begins with Leon, he has, like, first of all, we make the connection that because when Maigret reads the letter, right, the letter shows that this guy named Leon wrote to Emma, and then all of a sudden are we wondering, is this guy who wrote this articulate letter of love, is this the guy we're talking about? And then when he starts talking at the interrogation, like, yeah, he is, and everyone thought he was a monster, but he was made into like that hulking, scary figure, in his own way disfigured because of the trauma that he's been through so many years, right? So he's like the living embodiment of the evil that Michoud and the other two have unleashed upon him.
And then I think the only one left is Michoud's mom, and she wasn't really in it. And like you said,
more of her.
It should have been more of her. And Simenon uses that same kind of plot in a later issue, later episode. But in that one, the mom is like, you get it. You're like, oh yeah, this woman absolutely would go out in the street to protect her son and kill someone else.
Wow,
absolutely.
But in this one, not so much.
Not so much. That's interesting. Yeah, I can't really think of anybody else you've missed there. And I agree with you with what you're saying about Emma being probably the most three-dimensional of all of them. It's just a shame that some of these interesting characters are just backfilled at the end of the story and kind of feel rushed in there, particularly Leon, because he's a presence in the book all throughout, but he's not explained until the last act. And, being a figure of suspicion is all right in a story, but because of his role as a scapegoat for all this criminal stuff that happened in the past, he needs to be given a bit more time on stage, So
I never made the realization of Frankenstein until you guys said it. That's pretty good. That he is.
That feeling, eh?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, because he is created by these other guys, and they've got to deal with him now that they've let him out in the world. And once they sense that, oh shit, the monster's coming back, they got to start manufacturing, or Michu does. He has to start manufacturing all this stuff to try to make it not a problem. But
yeah, you got the angry villagers too going
absolutely,
after him.
yeah. And that's further linked to all of this xenophobia, right? Like, I just can't get away from these themes of the bourgeois class kind of stuff, and
it's there. I think it's
xenophobia,
there.
yeah. And the poor yellow dog is a symbol for all of that. Just got to take the hit, like the outsider, the strangeness of it. And, it kind of reminded me, Josh, of that scene in, is it Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's play, right? Where like Cinna the poet gets like trampled to death or something after the conspiracy or after Caesar's assassination, because he's mistaken for Cinna the conspirator.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's just there's dozens, hundreds
examples,
stories, of like public displays of violence, but there's a lot going on with the secondary cast, I guess, and the yellow dog deserves a place on the stage too. So
definitely,
I dinged it a little bit for the backfilling, factor. A lot of it not being pieced out, but instead just kind of conveniently thrown at the ends. But having said that, it's a great secondary cast, and I couldn't hit it too hard, so I just gave it a 4 overall.
Same.
Oh, well, we're close
3.5.
3.5.
Yeah.
I think, Nick, if I can be so bold, buddy, and say this, I think this story is really, really a great one to have talked about, because you've got more experience as the Maigret guy. So you're coming to this and feeling like it's not giving you the things that some of the other stories have given you, whereas Josh and I are seeing this as a different read, perhaps a little bit more independent of the series, and giving us more than the Headless Corpse gave us, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's cool.
The third book will be interesting, I think, because then we might get something of a merger of the two. Maybe that's what I'm kind of thinking might happen.
Well, let's do the scores up, guys. For Maigret's The Yellow Dog by Georges Simenon, I have a score of 4, 4, 4, 12, and 8. I'm at 20 out of 25, so it's a good book for me. I really enjoyed it. Josh, you are at a 4, 4, 4, 12. You're also at a 20.
Okay.
So we're spot on together. And Nick, let's see where we're at here, buddy. You've got 9.5, 12. You're at a 16, so you're a little more lukewarm on it. But all of us passed it without much difficulty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a Maigret story. It's still good. It's the out of the 7, I would put it at number 6. Yeah, I think there's only one that is lower, and it's the this one, which it has two names. None of Maigret's Business and Maigret Enjoys Himself, where he's on vacation and he like just reads the newspaper and kind of like solves this crime through the newspaper. And I was like, it's an interesting idea, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's get something a bit more procedural.
Yeah, not as involved.
Well, listen, buddy, you have to come on our show and we'll do another Maigret.
Yes,
in the next few months. And return the favor of you hosting us here today, because it was really, really nice to jump on with you.
Yeah,
it was
like 3. I guess of the ones you're remaining, think of like 3 of them and pick the best one, and then we'll go for that. I guess that might be the best.
Or one that you haven't read. We can do one,
or that too.
Do another one you haven't read.
Okay, yeah,
cool. That might actually be more. That might be a more interesting convo from that too, because we're all going into it blind, right, with no expectations. So that could be.
So the Headless Corpse is in the middle, right? It's like 50 something.
Yeah, 1955.
And this one's at the beginning. Would you want something that was like towards the end? Maybe.
Shall we pick a later Maigret and see?
Yeah, let's see if we can get what we got from this maybe in later Maigret, or maybe something in between that. Like that. But yeah, I'm down for that.
Cool,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, buddy, for having us on. It was really cool, and keep up the good work with all your videos and stuff. I'm subscribing now and. Checking them all out. And I know I've already mentioned this to you behind the scenes, but that Bad Ronald, was it? Is that his name?
Yeah. Bad Ronald. Yeah.
That's something else, man.
It's so good. Yeah. They just released it. It just because that was a pre-order.
Yeah.
So he just reissued it. But yeah, it was like the one thriller that Jack Vance ever wrote.
Wow. Cool.
And they made a TV movie out of it.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, great concept, but
yeah.
Anyway,
Well, thanks for coming on, guys. And, to all the people that are watching here on YouTube, please go over and check it out, especially if you're one of the people that watched the Elusive Exclusive Book Society's video on Morbid Taste for Bones, and then to go to hear Scott and Josh break it down, especially the Crusade part, how it relates to Brother Cadfill is just one of the best things I ever heard.
Awesome. I'm so happy you enjoyed that. I'm still flattered by that so much. That's awesome. I love it.
And you guys you're streaming everywhere but YouTube, right? All the other platforms.
Yeah, we're available. You can check our podcast out wherever you like to get your podcast. We just haven't ventured over into YouTube yet, but this is a good step for us, Josh.
Yeah, it's a good gateway, I suppose. Now,
absolutely.
Gateway.
And the last episode you did was Parker, right?
The last episode we did, the most recent episode we did was Josh's LTP Noir on
Sunset Boulevard.
But
before that, we did the Donald Westlake. We did the Castle in the Air. Of course, Westlake. As Richard Stark, he wrote the Parker books, right?
Yeah.
So
the Parker series. Yeah, the Professional Thief.
Yeah.
Hell yeah!
I really enjoyed that. And but I wanted to check out the Parker ones after we read that kind of spoof story that he wrote. So we were talking about that we'd be getting into Westlake or Stark in the future for sure, because we know that he wrote a spec James Bond script and that was made into a movie, to a book, I should say. And so we were thinking of checking that one out, something forever or something. Or
we'll check that out. I'll send you the message behind the scenes. But maybe, Nick, if you or any of your viewers want to recommend books for Josh and I to take on, we're more than happy to consider that, because we're always looking for good things to add to our upcoming seasons. So if you got some ideas of things you'd like to hear us thrash out, or if your viewers do, then get us at pipes_pod on Instagram, or email us at lightingpipes@gmail.com.
I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to ask if you'd ever read a Judge D book.
No, man. No,
Robert Van Gulik.
No.
It's a Chinese detective in the 1600s.
Oh, Josh, this sounds good, buddy. This sounds like something we got to tackle.
And Van Gulik was a kind of he studied history, and he discovered old writings of this character. So it's actually from the era this character existed. So he took it and he started rewriting news stories of this ancient character. So
that sounds like a Fast Facts feature that you could really lose yourself in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, send me the link of that guy, and I'll check out his bibliography and whatnot, and see what's to do with that. That sounds awesome.
And recommend one of those for us, particularly, and we will definitely add it to our reading.
Oh yeah, Haunted Monastery. That's the best.
Haunted Monastery. Okay, we'll check it out, buddy. Right. Awesome. Thanks again, Nick, for everything.
I know Josh is like, I got to go to work, dude. Close it out. Okay. Thanks everyone for watching. We are out of here.
Take care, everybody. Thanks again.
Thanks everyone. Take care.